Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're dialing in the world. I am Vibhushri. I have been leading this project on the REN 21 from the REN 21 Secretariat, which is the REN 21 UNECE 2022 Renewable Energy Status Report. Very happy to see everybody, and I would like to invite Komila Nabieva, who is my co-conspirator today to lead us through this event. So Komila and I will together be going through the event and introducing the speakers, and then also inviting you for some question and answer. So Komila, should we maybe start with some very brief introduction, instructions maybe on how the event would be made better? So maybe if everybody takes a few minutes to send in your name and where you're dialing in from in the chat, that would be really great. This way we know where you are from, and I see somebody already started from India, which is really nice because I'm from India as well. So everybody, please take a couple of seconds to send in and introduce yourselves. Komila.
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks a lot for the introduction, Vipul. So really nice to see so many people joining. It's very exciting to see so much interest for the report. So yes, let's take a few seconds to add our names and countries we are joining from, and once we are ready, we can start with the agenda.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's really nice to see people from everywhere are joining. So there's, and I'm sure the findings and the discussion will be relevant to people from all over the world. So I see someone from Albania, South Africa, of course, Georgia, the Energy Community Secretariat, whom we'll also hear from a bit later, Croatia, Nigeria, Japan. This is really nice. So without further ado, I think, Komila, shall we get started since we have a rather full agenda today, and I'm sure we also want to get to the presentation and the findings of the report quite soon. For this, I'd like to invite the REN 21 Executive Director, Rana Adib, to please share some welcoming remarks and then kick us off.
Yes, thank you very much, Vibu. Hello, everybody. Hello, Camilla. Welcome to everybody here. And I'm, as Vibu said, really excited to see. And I think it's one of the big messages. This region is really important, and it's also globally important. And I think we're very excited to have the opportunity to use the renewable energy story and developments in the region to also put some focus on this. So welcome to one of the two official launches of the reports. With this launch, we're going to focus specifically on the energy community contracting parties. You will hear voices, speakers, partners talking about this from some of those countries. And we are very thrilled, basically, to have many speakers here who will contribute to this event. And I would especially like to mention our partners, obviously, the UNECE, and the energy community to this event, and also throughout this process. So I think what makes this process special is that it is really building on so many people engaging around a shared topic, views, data, knowledge, insights, perspectives. We have approximately 270 people who have participated in this process. And I think along this process that has run over many months, actually, of collaboration, we've really managed to build a very important community that is sharing the passion and interest for renewable energy developments. So we have this community come together now in this virtual space. And also you'll have the possibility, because I'm not an expert basically on this, you heard already Vivi basically who has been leading the project here. I would like to also mention we have the authoring team led by Alexandra Novikova, who will be participating and available for Q&As, the project management team, Anastasia, Yuanu, and Vibu, and the regional collaboration. So the partners, please join in and be active on the chat. And yeah, I'll have the pleasure to see you again later to present the findings of the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you for sharing that. Next, I would actually like to invite the UNECE Executive Secretary, Mrs. Olga Algayerova, to kindly share some remarks.
Thank you, Camila. Dear Rana, dear participants, distinguished guests, colleagues, it's really my great pleasure to open this event today and participate in launching the joint REN 21 and United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Renewable Energy Status Report 2022. This joint work has been a flagship activity for UNECE since 2015, and our partnership with REN 21 has at its core the common goal to substantially increase the uptake of renewable energy in our region. As we know, the world is facing the existential threat of climate change and is in the middle of its first truly global energy crisis. In recent months, we have seen severe heat waves in many countries and dramatic floods in others. All have and are taking a toll on populations. And with the heat waves, we see droughts, rivers are disappearing, water bodies are shrinking. This in turn is having an impact on hydropower, which many countries depend on. And renewable energy remains a key solution to mitigating climate change. But the shift to renewable sources of energy is not happening fast enough. Let me quote Mr. Lord Kelvin, who famously said, "If you cannot measure, you cannot improve it." How can we know if we are successful unless success is defined and tracked? The joint REN 21 UNECE Renewable Energy Status Report not only collects data on renewable energy in the UNECE region, but also improves the quality of the data by identifying the right indicators and by preparing tracking systems. The focus is on 17 countries of our region, most of which are what we call our program countries. When the UNECE group of experts on renewable energy was first established, it was back in 2014, a baseline for renewable energy and energy efficiency in our region was a pressing need. This report served the purpose of presenting an analysis of up-to-date data and information on the status of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Renewable energy and energy efficiency still urgently need to be scaled up if the world is to deliver on the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, because as we know, 2030 is less than a decade away. So the UNECE has been at the forefront in promoting renewable energy with numerous and concrete activities as well as specific projects. Thanks to our cooperation with REN 21 and other international partners, we now have a better understanding of the status, trends, and challenges in financing investment opportunities for renewable energy, despite untapped potential in Southeast and Eastern Europe, Central Asia, the Caucasus, and the Russian Federation. UNECE has also been driving change on renewables through our multi-stakeholder dialogues at national level, the so-called UNECE Renewable Energy Hard Talks. And these hard talks, organized with a range of partners, including REN 21, help to understand the bottlenecks to renewable energy uptake and help to identify viable solutions. The hard talks spearhead the achievement of concrete recommendations for rapid changes and meeting renewable energy targets set up by the participating countries. The third edition of the Renewable Energy Status Report takes into account the need to find ways for a post-COVID-19 social economic recovery, helping countries get on track to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals and to accelerate the transition to resilient energy systems. The UN climate talks, COP27, are only a few weeks away. Countries and investors in the UNECE region must urgently redouble their commitment to deployment of renewables to achieve global net zero targets and rapidly reduce fossil fuel dependency. Scaling up renewable energy investments is crucial to strengthen energy security and affordability, considering the energy and economic challenges related to the conflict in Ukraine. The combined public and private investments in renewables across the focus countries of the report are insufficient. They fall far short. In 2018, renewable energy investments in the region were at $7.2 billion. A similar amount has already been achieved almost 10 years earlier. This figure represents only some 2.2% of the global total and approximately 13% of the renewable energy investment in the European Union in 2018. That was $55 million. Much more can be done to attract and secure renewable energy investments in the 17 considered countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, we urgently need to scale up ambition and secure political will. With concrete political commitments, the right long-term policies and additional investments, we can achieve climate change mitigation results, sustainable development and energy security more effectively through renewable energy. To conclude, UNECE, as always, remains committed to work on all of this together with member states and with all of you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olga, and especially for reminding us of the importance of multi-stakeholder dialogues. So after hearing from Olga, I'd like to invite Tibor Fischer, who is the Director of Renewables from the German Energy Agency, DENA, who is a key partner in this UNECE renewable energy uptake project that DENA, REN21 and UNECE have been working on for the last 18 months or so. Thanks, Tibor.
Yeah, thanks, Bibo. Yeah, just would like to give some additional comments. So, dear colleagues, the UNECE region is characterized by heterogeneity in the integration and expansion of renewable energies. In order to make the specific challenges for renewable energies visible, it is of central importance to analyze the situation in the 17 countries in Central Asia and the Caucasus in detail. The report prepared today within the framework of the joint UNECE project ReUptake shows the status in the individual countries, but also the starting points for the further expansion of renewable energies. The project is founded by the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Especially nowadays, it becomes clear how important the further development of renewable energy is in order to reduce import dependencies and CO2 emissions. I am pleased that we have the opportunity to discuss key aspects and results today. Furthermore, I would like to announce that we will also be able to present central key results from our report for all 56 UNECE member states, which was also prepared within the framework of the joint ReUptake project today at 11 a.m. This report will also be published in the upcoming days. I look very much forward to the presentation of the UNECE report and the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tibor. That was very nice, and indeed, there's a lot to look forward to with these two studies being launched nearly at the same time. So thank you, and I'm sure that this link will be available to everybody as soon as it is published. So next, I'd like to invite Naida Tasso, who is with the Energy Community Secretariat, and really a very key partner to this specific morning event, since we have 9 contracting parties and an observer country of the energy community as part of the report's focus. Welcome, Naida.
Thank you very much, and good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. On behalf of Energy Community, I would like, first of all, to greet all of you and to thank to our partners for the invitation to talk today. I'm extremely pleased and honored to address you for the launch of Renewable Energy Status Report 2022. And this report is particularly important during these challenging times. As mentioned by previous speakers, the urgency of ending our dependence of fossil fuels has never been more pressing than it is today. And of course, the best way to reduce dependency and to increase energy security is by increasing use of renewable energy and scaling up energy efficiency measures. Energy community contracting parties have significant potential to increase the share of renewables in their energy mix by taking advantage of rapidly falling costs of technology. However, enabling policies are absolutely essential for this to happen. This includes ambitious long-term targets as well as power sector reforms. Redirecting fossil fuel subsidies to renewables and putting price on carbon are also needed. Today's event comes as a key moment for the energy community, as the Ministerial Council is expected to adopt 2030 energy and climate targets on 15th of December this year. The adaptation of the targets is essential to put energy community contracting parties on the path towards achieving climate neutrality of their economies by 2050 and decreasing dependence on the fossil fuels. On renewables, the national targets to be adopted are anticipated to result in overall energy community target of 31% of energy from renewable sources by 2030. However, the targets alone will not be enough. For renewables to thrive, complex permitting procedures need to be simplified and shortened, and at the same time, effective de-risking mechanisms such as reliable market-based support schemes are needed to mitigate the high capital cost of renewables in the region. For that, liquid intraday and day-ahead market are crucial. That said, I'm looking forward to learn about the findings of this report and the ways how we can jointly cooperate to support our contracting parties and other countries on the way to hasten the deployment of renewables. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, Naida. That was really insightful. So now we're moving on to really the most, I guess, critical part of today's launch, which is to see what's behind the report and to discover the findings. And for this, I'm very pleased to invite again REN21 Executive Director, Rana Adib, to lead us through the findings of the report. A quick suggestion is that please, if you have any questions related to the report, leave them in the chat function, which you've already been using for introducing yourselves. After Rana's presentation, we'll have the time to take a few questions, and then for those which are unanswered, please, don't worry, we will try to address all of these through email and get back to you in the coming days. But please do leave all your questions and comments in the chat, and then we'll see what we can answer on the other side of the presentation. So over to you, Rana, for leading us through this.
Thank you very much, Vivu. I'll share my screen for this exciting moment of sharing with you the findings of the report. Now I'm wondering, can you see the presentation? Excellent. So, renewables now, this is REN21. And I guess building on what we heard in the introductory remark, also a very important message that is relevant for the region. So in this UNECE renewable energy report, or maybe before jumping on this, and I think it's important to jump on it or to explain this, REN21, UNECE, and DENA are working together basically in this region since many years. And I think throughout those years, we have really also, from REN21 side, very much applied, I guess, our pillars. So who are we? We're a global community of players from governments, intergovernmental organizations, industry, NGOs, and research and academia, working together to really accelerate the shift to renewable energy. We heard about the UNECE Renewable Energy Hard Talks, for instance, and these have been dialogues that are very much building on the voices and on the fact of bringing together those different perspectives. Why are we doing this? We're doing it because when we speak about the energy transition, it's not only about changing the energy system, it's changing the economies, it's changing society, and obviously those players have a key role to play in making such a change accessible and supported, I guess. What we are doing is making renewable energy visible by really building data, or it's not building data, making data available, identifying it, consolidating it, but also the intelligence. So all the insights you have from your particular activities, countries, are really relevant to have a picture of what is happening. And while doing this, we really do this to raise the awareness about the potential and the gap that might exist, but also drive dialogue and inform and influence decision makers. Now, coming to the UNECE region, as you heard, we have been working basically in this region for many years with the objective to really make renewable energy visible here through data and knowledge and showing the status on renewable energy and energy efficiency. One word on this, very clearly, the transition to move to a renewable-based economy, society, energy system clearly builds on 3 pillars, which are energy saving, energy efficiency, and renewables. And they cannot be dissociated. So the report is clearly also looking into the energy efficiency part. So there is continuous reporting since 2015, improvement of data. Let's be honest, there are still data gaps, and you'll hear more about this later. In this edition, and I think that's really something which is very exciting and also shows the increasing attention for renewable energy, there were 260 contributors participating. So the report features 70 countries plus Kosovo. We're looking into the regional overview, policy landscape, market and industry developments, distributed renewable energy for energy access, which is highly relevant basically in the region too, energy efficiency, investment flows. And for the first time, we have basically added a chapter on the current thinking about the future of renewables, because we also see that with the insights, the perspectives, it's about inspiring how we imagine the future and creating the right building blocks. We have 9 countries of the energy community, so contracting parties, Albania, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, Serbia, Ukraine, and you'll hear more from some of those players. 1 observer, and also the parties are basically these are countries that are party to the treaty, and that's also why, especially in the current situation, I think having a specific focus on the energy community is really interesting. So why does this region matter? I think when we are stepping back from the renewable energy developments and a part of some areas, we see that in the global renewable energy story, this region is often not really visible. And still, and I think this is why it's interesting to dig deeper basically in the regional realities, we see that so many things are happening and that there is a lot of interesting things that can also inform basically the global developments and contribute to find new approaches. I think one part is obviously there is 4% of the global population living basically in the countries and the focus countries we looked at. But when we are looking now specifically into the region, there is a massive untapped potential for renewable energy development. So this is just one reality which is also driving UNECE, for instance, to very much look into renewable energy and energy efficiency developments, but also some countries in the region specifically. Another reality, and so to some extent we started saying that what we are seeing in the region is actually kind of the microcosm of what we see in the global energy community. Of those 18 countries, there are basically 5 countries that are fossil fuel producers, oil and gas producers. All other countries are highly dependent on fossil fuel imports. So this is something which is very, very present in the region. And so fossil fuel import and import dependency is really at the forefront of the regional story when we're looking at the energy transition. There is a need for a stable and secure energy supply. Interestingly, there is 100% of renewable electricity basically rates, but we also know that there is still, this region is also facing aging infrastructure challenges. And it's not because there is 100% electricity that there is a good quality of electricity supply. And then very clearly, since a couple of months now, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has really accentuated the tensions, I guess, but also the opportunities for renewable energy that do exist in the region. Since energy security and sovereignty has been so much at the forefront already, this is accentuated. We see a rising awareness and also, the fact that there is interesting learning. I'll anticipate one part. Obviously, there are short-term impacts, basically, of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. One which is impacts basically on renewable energy capacities existing, but also questions on investment. Now, another aspect I think which is really important to highlight is the understanding, again, accentuated by the situation, of the key role energy plays, not only in the energy system, but for the economic activities and societal developments. And when we're looking, for instance, on the impact in terms of food supply chain, this has really been accentuated significantly, and also show that there's not only an impact in the region, so at the country levels and in the regions, but beyond. And one other aspect to mention, especially when we're looking into Western Balkan, is the challenge of bad air quality that is really having major health impacts, and where we see that many subnational governments also, or cities, there is really an awareness about the link to fossil fuel and the need to move away from fossil fuel. So the other reality in the region, and I think this is a historic part, is the competition with other energy sources and import dependency. So I spoke about the energy security part. Here on the slide, you basically see like the energy self-sufficiency of the countries, final energy consumption of renewable energy. This is basically the light yellow part, that's a renewable part. The dark part is fossil fuel and nuclear. What we see is that there are only 5 countries that are self-sufficient. All the others depend highly on imports. That's one part. We also have countries that have a high share of hydropower. And this rises or shows another aspect to the energy security discussion, which is the domestic energy security discussion. So the high resilience on hydropower, for instance, as a result of climate change, also highlight the necessity to diversify basically fuel sources. And I'll come to this later. Another aspect of all countries is basically that we are talking, and again, this is also a historic result, but we have a high, the countries are highly energy intense. So when we're looking into the energy intensity of the countries, you see on the left side, basically the focus countries we looked at, on the right side as a comparison, the average for the EU and OECD countries. Over the last couple of years, we have seen a significant improvement here in terms of energy saving and efficiency. However, there is still a lot of potential for energy efficiency measures. And I think a potential to actively tap into. Drags and drivers in the region. So fossil fuel and import dependency is something which is driving, but also dragging, I guess. When we compare renewable energy, we see that there is still in the region high subsidies for fossil fuel and artificially low tariffs for electricity from fossil fuel and nuclear. And as a result, renewable energy is really competing here. And I think that's the specificity of the country. The economic argument, basically, of renewable energy being the least cost option is not really working and convincing to move to renewable energy. And we see that there are clearly other aspects to it. And in a region like this, the power of conventional energy. So why the power of conventional energy? Because we're moving away from 100% fossil fuel-based plus hydropower part to something different. But this also means that the economic structures, governance structures, etc., might try to keep basically this power in place. But there are obviously also norms and myths and a lot of awareness raising that is there. Other drags, investment risk and certain uncertainties that are very much linked to policy instability also, but are certainly also accentuated by the current geopolitical situation in the region. And then there is, we had a hard talk in Georgia, for instance, public opposition, so the acceptance of renewable energy part. The drivers clearly are energy security and sovereignty. And then I would like to really pause on one specifically. It's basically the EU cross-border adjustment mechanism. And I think this is really, I mentioned before that this region clearly shows how important energy is for all economic activities. Here we see basically that this cross-border adjustment mechanism leads to the fact that countries are engaging to renewable energy developments, energy efficiency development, to reduce the footprint on the good they are exporting basically into the EU. So we see that trade policies can highly impact basically and accelerate the transition. Energy poverty is a reality. Why? Because so in remote and rural areas, we have a couple of countries where surveys really show that households can, for instance, not pay their energy bills. But also when we are looking not only at electricity, but also heating and cooling, for instance. And then health and air quality. Now, what has been happening? There are good news. So let's start with the good news. The good news is when we're looking actually at the last 5 years, we have a breakthrough growth of renewable power. And 20.7 gigawatt of capacity have been added during the last 5 years. Totaling basically or reaching a total of 106 gigawatt in 2021. And this is really interesting also because it is, and I'll show this on the next slide, it's not only hydropower leading this, but very much solar PV and wind. So I'll come back to this later. When you're looking at the slide here, you also see that the leading countries of the countries we looked at have been in terms of added installed capacity, the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Interestingly, for different reasons. Now, the other great story is that we really see a massive uptake of solar and wind capacity. For the first time, solar and wind have been mainly responsible for the renewable energy growth. Historically, this has really been driven by hydropower only. And that's very much driven by two aspects. One, which is the reduced cost of solar and wind, that's the first one, but also the decentralized nature of this and the possibility of building up those capacities very quickly and very clearly and targeted attention to those technologies. So what does this mean when we're thinking about markets? We clearly see that basically solar and wind capacities have grown 10-fold and 7-fold respectively during the last 5 years. And this clearly also shows opportunities for renewable energy sectors to develop basically in the region. So the growth is backed by many factors. Obviously the energy security sovereignty discussion, but also favorable policies. And I think that is something which is really interesting. I take the example of Kazakhstan, for instance. Here we see that basically during the last 5 years, when we're looking at solar PV and wind, there has been almost no developments when we looked 5 years ago. We had a hard talk here where we also brought players together. There has been, I think, not only because of the hard talks, but we also know UNECE has worked here. There have been targeted activities. DENA has worked here. So bringing the different players together, and I think we heard about the multi-stakeholder parts before. So bringing players together who can develop a shared vision, and as a result, really policy attention. And I think it's really pointing to the fact that policies are really fundamental to make the shift happen, but they can make the shift happen very quickly. Now, when we're looking at what has been happening, we see that there is also not so good news, and it's important to look at those to improve them. When we're looking at the share of renewable energy and the total final energy consumption, so what is the share of renewables when we look at all our energy demand, we see that this has actually been unchanged since 2014. And that is something which is really critical. Obviously, there is an increasing energy demand, but when we look at the massive potential of energy efficiency, so the energy intensity of the countries, plus the potential on renewable energy, we can do better, I guess. In 2019, the share of renewable energy all over, including traditional biomass, however, has been of 18.2%. I mentioned traditional biomass because almost 100% of, I exaggerate a bit, but a very large share for instance, heating in households is building on traditional biomass. Positive developments on the renewables share in Bosnia-Herzegovina, Kosovo, Ukraine, and Armenia. Now, why do we have also partly decline? The decline is due to slowdown in hydropower. I mentioned climate impact here, increase in motorization, which also increases the demand. And yes. Now, why is the share so low? There is another story, part of the story to it. Most of the attention has been lying on renewable power developments. The reality, and we have the same situation globally, is that we are consuming around 80% of the energy we consume. It's being consumed for heating, cooling, and transportation. So it is also very important that we look at those sectors to make the shift basically happen. And we see here on the left side the share of renewables in heating and cooling in the focus countries, so heating and cooling on the left side, and transport on the right side. So I think transport is obviously something which is highly critical and needs to be addressed very much. On the heating and cooling side, I think one message here, there is a massive potential basically to also address energy poverty through the development of renewable energy in this sector. And there is another part of the story, it's about investments. The reality is that we need policies to create the right framework and market conditions and attract investments, but investment also needs to be constantly increased to make the transition happen. So there has been fluctuating investment levels when we're looking at the last couple of years. And basically part of my slide is not. In 2018, we are coming back to investment levels we have observed in 2013. The reality is, since renewable energy costs have gone down so much, it is not reflected in the same way on the installed capacities. But still, we are speaking about US dollars 7.2 billion. And just as a comparison, when we're looking at the EU, it's about 56, Western Europe, 56.5%. And when we're looking globally, it compares to 284 billion US dollars. A big message here, the investment data on renewable energy investment in the focus countries is one of a really critical area where we need to improve the data to really capture all types of investment going into renewable energy. So a clear message is policies play a key role. And I think it's important to look back to look ahead with regard to this. We see that from the 18 countries we looked at, 15 countries have national renewable energy targets. 4 countries have a target for net zero emissions and carbon neutrality. So this is something which is really important. You have here on the left side the reality on power. So 76% of the countries we looked at have a renewable power targets, but the reality is only 23% of those focus countries have basically achieved this target so far. Transport, 41%, no focus country has achieved it, and you have seen the renewable energy share that are really low in the power sector. In heating and cooling, 35% of the countries have it, 67% of the countries have achieved their target. But this also showed that the targets probably need to become more ambitious. And this brings me to the right-hand side. Actually, the targets are not enough. The targets is about the ambition, but what is very clear, and I think we have heard it in the introductory remarks, we need policies and regulator frameworks, and we need a smooth implementation of those. We need to ease the facilitation of permitting processes, etc., to attract investment and create the markets, or to create the right market conditions for attracting investment. And then always a continuous development means to continuously increase the ambition, which means looking at the short term, medium term, and long term. That is a very, very important message and also gives guidance on the direction we look at. Another learning, I think, from the region is also that policies need to be broadened. If we take the example of CBAM, we see that it's not only about the energy policies and market reforms, but it is also about, for instance, trade policies. So the reality is that energy supply has an impact on trade and goods. There is an effect on the economy, and we see that those policies can really trigger renewable energy development. Another aspect, and I think the region has shown it, and also the current or the last couple of months have shown how important the food, energy, water nexus topic is basically in the region. So a specific attention is important to the agriculture sector, which is key energy consuming sector in Caucasus, Western Balkans, and Central Asia. And we also see, and this brings us to the fact that energy security also means a security on the supply chain side. And this brings me to the other aspect of industrial policy and economic policies. They are important because renewable energy is a key pillar for economic development, but also creates opportunity for local value creation, whether it is building up technology supply chains. It's an opportunity for creating local jobs and needs to be anchored and at the heart of industrial and economic policy. I'm almost at the end of the presentation, but I think it's really important to see that renewable energy build value, and this has really been, I think, one of the when you look at the chapter 7, for instance, there are really important learnings from the region. We see that renewable energy is a solution beyond energy supply. It's a resilience question. It's not only a resilience question to climate change, but clearly also a resilience to shocks and conflict. And I'll explain this a bit more. But it's also an opportunity for new energy governance, because we also see that new types of players can engage here, whether it is industry, whether it is basically consumers directly, cities, and these have been, we clearly see that the situation also in many countries here increase the appetite basically for engaging in renewable energy. Just the resilience to shocks and conflict. I think I mentioned that on the short term, basically the capacities, 90% of Ukraine's wind power capacities, 30% of solar capacities have been basically affected, and with the result that they are currently not operational. A really interesting learning, however, is because of the decentralized nature and the modularity, I guess, of renewable energy capacities, a part of those installations can be operational much more quickly than centralized energy infrastructure. And this is a very interesting learning from the region, which also shows that basically we're speaking about possibilities when we're thinking about post-conflict recovery, so to say, whether it is COVID or whether it is after geopolitical conflict, capacities to build energy infrastructure in a very quick way and also build on existing energy infrastructure that is there. Obviously, provided the fact that energy infrastructure, so the grids, are still operational. The other part is really the diversification. So a reduction of energy imports, a diversification or a reduction of fluctuating fossil fuel prices. And then the diversification also from, and I think this is why we also see so many solar PV and wind developments, is a diversification of just the single sources. The other aspect is the decentralization, which means that there is possibilities to serve remote areas, but also really address energy poverty. So there is very clearly not only the technical resilience, but also a certain socioeconomic and political resilience. And then the other learning, and I think this is more forward-looking on what we need to do, is urgent and concrete action need to be done by governments in collaboration with the private sector and civil society. Investment in energy supply are fundamental, but not enough. There is also need, especially given the aging energy infrastructure in some countries, the need to invest in infrastructure. There is an urgent need to go beyond electricity and look into heating, cooling, and transportation. And then when we are looking into the role of energy again for the economic activities, building stronger technology supply chains is also important, because renewable energy sources exist everywhere, but they also require the technology. And here it's really important to have like supply chains existing domestically, regionally. So this brings me to the other part, which is really increased regional collaboration in the region itself, so sub-regional collaboration, but also beyond the region. And we see the example of CBAM, or the current part on the food crisis generated by the situation in Ukraine, and linked to energy supply interruptions very much. And that's it, I think, from my side. The message is a massive potential, and lots of things to do, but also lots of things to build up on when we look at the great growth story of the last 5 years. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Rana, for this very comprehensive presentation. I guess our participants had to follow the presentation. That's why we didn't have a lot of questions in the chat. And we said that we will take only the report-specific questions. So we'll have Rana and Alexandra Novikova, our lead author, together with her team members, available to answer these questions. So I will read out one of the questions that was report-specific, and then invite either Rana or Alexandra together with her team to answer those. One question by Jose Bosch, and sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. What are the key milestones for decoupling energy use and economic growth in these countries? So I suppose Jose means focus countries.
This is a wonderful question. I will take the question, right, Rana? Or do you want to take it?
No, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say, I'm sorry, the echo is here. First of all, I would like to say that our countries during the last 20 years have made a significant process in decoupling the economic growth from energy consumption, and I cannot emphasize it more, because this is the process that we have observed, not only in 90s when the restructuring has happened, but also during the last 20 years. And there are several components overall of how we could decrease our energy intensity, and traditional components are that we could change our activities, so gross domestic product. We can change the structure of the economy, or we can improve energy efficiency. Well, here in terms of energy efficiency, I cannot again emphasize it more that how much we have to increase it. And this is also important in terms of the energy transition and support to the renewable energy growth. This is because whenever we don't improve energy efficiency enough, our energy demand grows too much, and therefore we have limited options to address it, reducing the number of options, including renewables. This is why the first step is energy saving and energy efficiency. Energy saving I also can't emphasize enough. You have to do additional to energy efficiency, just save energy. This is because you are now at the stage when you develop rapidly as compared to other countries, for instance, the Western European countries, and you're now building your infrastructure. So your future energy consumption depends on how you currently build your buildings, your roads, your infrastructure, and you have to avoid this lock-in effect that we created in the Western culture, so that your future energy consumption will not suffer from it, and you will be able to address it with the renewable options available. And I would like to add one more comment, which is also critical for you. There are only a few countries which are not importers of energy-intensive goods into the developed world. The rest of you, you are exporters to the European Union as well as other countries. Such products as food, steel, metals, and I mean aluminium, cement, whatsoever. But what it means that you consume energy for your own development, and you also consume energy as a country to help us to consume, to help us in the European Union and other countries to develop. That means that for you, it will be much more difficult to reduce your emissions and to address this demand with your own domestic renewables and energy efficiency, because you, in a way, subsidize us with your carbon footprint. Therefore, the key question here is also to think how you restructure an economy, advance it, and move toward at one point to the service economy, and stop doing only exports of resources and energy-intensive products. So this is a little bit push for your development. Please think how to develop this as a complex problem, but not only as energy-related problem. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for this answer. I'll take another question by Charles Brovi. He has written that this is a crisis that is similar to what is going on in Europe. And so we're looking to share experiences on quick-to-market solutions that can effectively ameliorate the crisis in the immediate to short-term time frame, preferable renewable energy solutions. So I'm wondering if the essence of this question is rather, what are the lessons that can be taken from this region and can be used in Europe? If Alexandra or Rana, you would like to take this question.
Yeah, I'm happy to give like maybe a global perspective here, and I think this is really where we see like what we observe in the region is we spoke about it. It's almost like a microcosm that is representative very much of what we see in the global energy economy. And when you then dive again into what are the solutions and the answers, I think Charles is exactly right. And so the question clearly is, how do we create basically the condition that we reduce the investment in fossil fuel, that we use fossil fuel subsidies. So these are very quick parts that need direct attention, and move basically this support to energy efficiency and renewable energy. This is something which is fundamental, and I think a learning also from the region that you need the right market and policy conditions. The other part is very clearly, and I think that's a message, and we have seen it, you see, especially when you're looking at the European situation, and I think that's a positive development probably, even though it's a very unfortunate situation, but there is positive developments linked to the current geopolitical situation, which is a real understanding of the fundamental role energy plays and an acceleration to move the ambition basically into policies and implementation. Now, and the concrete action, Charles, I think as Sasha also just mentioned it, it's very clearly reducing the energy demand is super important. Bringing energy efficiency and renewable energy together is really important. And we see this goes hand in hand, and there is a massive potential for it. Because, and it is really important because it reduces the cost. And then that's also reality. The modular part and the fact that you can build up solar PV and renewable and wind capacities in really short times is where there needs to be a focus. When we're looking into the heating sector, the development of heat pumps are really important in this context and can also be an answer to the region, clearly also to Europe. And yeah, then I think a cross-sectoral collaboration.
Thanks a lot, Rana. And Alexandra would like to add to this answer.
Yeah, so this question could be understood in many ways, but I will use this chance just to exchange between Western Europe and the focus regions of the report. What are the common challenges and solutions on which they can exchange? And as an expert who works there and there, I can say that both regions are solving an issue of technology security. So Rana emphasized how it is important to build the local supply chain of renewable energy technologies. In the focus region of the report, only few countries have managed to build a supply chain. And this is Ukraine, the Russian Federation, to some extent Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, but overall the whole region is very much dependent on import of renewable energy technologies. which is obviously expensive, but also that means that you do not harvest the benefits of building the whole industry of it. You lose value added along the supply chain, you don't provide jobs, you lose taxes and many other things. And this is why first with the content process form, it is very important that the governments support not only the consumption of renewable energy at the end point, but also the building the whole supply chain of producing and installing renewables, and not only producing, but also maintaining and operating, because otherwise you will be dependent on service contracts for the whole time of operating these renewable energy technologies. So this is what we also see a problem for many countries of the European Union, and they also try to tackle it and build this supply chain. It's challenging, difficult, but there is no other way. This is the first issue. The second issue is that it is also important not to focus only on large-scale renewable technologies, but also please look at your potential, as Rana said, for instance, in heating and cooling, where distributed energy, distributed renewable energy technologies could play a big role. And this sector is really large. And if it provides simple solutions like energy-efficient heat stoves and biomass and similar simple others, that could make a significant difference, because many of the countries still use a lot of traditional fuels for heating. For instance, in Georgia, in basically all countries of Balkans and others. And the next and the last issue, which I here would like to emphasize, it is critically important to support the development of the renewable energy infrastructure. And these are only a few countries of Western Europe who quickly understood it, but others are just realizing it and started talking about the balancing capacity and building regional cooperation, especially in this current situation, how to make the power common and integrated, because many countries are pretty small or so much integrated, like Central Asian countries, independent of each other. This is again referring to that so-called water, energy, food nexus, so that if you are disintegrated, it is extremely difficult to integrate this new whole capacity into the grid. Thank you so much, and I pass the floor to the next questions.
I would just like to add one thing on what Sasha said also, because I saw there was a question on the SADC region, for instance, and I think what is really interesting is when we're looking the question that also directly linked to the technology sovereignty, I guess, and building supply chains. It's also when you look into some of the countries, basically we look at have really important material for the energy transition, so resources. And the question that exists here too is it about exporting the resources? Is it about exporting the energy, or is it about exporting green goods, so to say? And I think this is really why the strategy and the vision need to be broadened by not only looking at the energy system, but the whole economy. And I think when we're looking into many African countries, we have very similar situations here. We don't have the same situation in terms of 100% electricity access, but we have same situations because there need to be very important choices about how to build up basically a new infrastructure. And there are many countries that also have like a material and similar questions to ask themselves on how do you create also value and local jobs and industry by engaging in the transition.
Thanks a lot, Rana and Alexandra, for these answers. We are aware of the time. We said we'll have only 10 minutes to take questions, and the report is large. So apparently it's about 100 pages, and you're welcome to discover it and take out lessons not only for the region itself, but also on the global level. And at this point, we'll just say that we're happy to take questions in future. There will be an email shown at the end of our event today, where you can send your questions, and RAN21 and our author team will try to answer them later. And at this point, I will give back floor to Vibhu to go to the second part.
Thank you so much, Camilla. And indeed, we're not yet done. There's a very interesting and important part of the event, which we're now moving into, which is we have all these focus countries, especially those in this particular event, which are, contracting parties of the energy community. And we have 3 representatives from these who would like to share some perspectives, but also a very key part of this project and this report Gianluca Sambucini, who will come in to share his perspectives of working in the region, because Gianluca has actually been maybe one of the people on this call who's been there on this report and this project since the very beginning, since 2015. So we'll start off with Konstantin Gura. Konstantin, please, we look forward to hearing your perspectives from Ukraine.
Yes. Dear friends, dear colleagues, first of all, I would say that it's my real pleasure to participate in this discussion, and please receive my grateful words to RAN21 team. Your job is great, the report is great. Speaking about renewables, I can say that everyone maybe in the world consider renewable energy development as a key to solve not only the issue of CO2 emissions reduction and mitigation climate changes, but today renewables became a tool to decarbonize national economies and ensure energy transition. But there is a different aspect. As a Ukrainian, I would say that the world is changing temporarily and global agenda is changing temporarily. The world is facing enormous problems with military security, which leads to the issue of energy security, and renewables definitely could be a tool to address these issues. Speaking about my country, I would say that during last years, about 8 billion euros were invested in Ukrainian economy in the renewable energy sector. In 2015-2021, more than 9 gigawatts of electrical renewable energy capacities were added in the energy mix of Ukraine. And renewables developing really fastly. According to statistical data, in 2019, Ukraine was in the top of 10 countries in the world, and in 2020 was in the 5 top European countries in terms of the pace of development of solar energy. At the beginning of 2022, it was around 9 gigawatts, as I told, of renewables installations. That makes around 10% in Ukrainian energy mix. Of course, the situation changed in February 2022. We understand why, because the war on the European continent started. The invasion in Ukraine started. And of course, it's a terroristic act, we consider. Speaking about industry, of course, it stopped new investments into the sector. And at the moment, many solar and wind power plants under occupation. It's like hostages of the terrorists which came into Ukrainian territory. More than half of wind power plants under occupation now. And we know about the cases of destruction of wind turbines, solar panels, electrical equipment stations, power transmission lines, etc., etc. But we are still working. We keep working. At the same time, I would say that this March, like 16th of March 2022, the Ukrainian energy system became fully integrated to the European network of system operators for transmission of electricity, NSOE. So now we are able to make technical flows of electricity if necessary with speaking about renewables, of course, for our country, renewables development and reaching the energy security is one of the key tools. And definitely RAN21 platform could be the great tool to implement such goal. As the chair of the group of experts of renewable energy of UNECE, I maybe came back to the worldwide agenda. And of course, everyone consider renewables as a reality, and we keep developing this trend all over the world. But this path will be challenging and cause a number of questions. how to integrate flexibility options in order to match the generation of renewable electricity with demand, how to bring bankability into renewable energy projects, how to decarbonize industry, which is highly dependent on fossil fuels, how to decarbonize the transport sector, etc., etc. So we have to do a lot. Again, I would say the Trend 21 report is great and really helpful for further development of renewables. So thank you for your attention, and please feel free to contact me if any need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Konstantin. And indeed, this was a very important learning and experience to share with everybody. So I really appreciate having you here. Next, I'd like to move on to a very dear friend of this project as well, Margarita Arabidze from the Ministry of Energy and Sustainable Development in Georgia, who also very kindly co-hosted the Renewable Energy Hard Talk last year, 1 year ago. Margarita, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And Vibhu and dear colleagues, and I'm so happy to be here. And I see and very familiar and faces. It's very nice. And for me, as Gianluca, also and Vibhu and Alexander, also my colleagues, and who is also in the representative from DENA, and Lauriency and others, and thank you so much for very kind and cooperation. And I would like to express my gratitude to you for such a good cooperation. Our cooperation and goes and back and many years, and it's highly and appreciated. And for me, it's my honor and to be invited and by REN 21 and the energy community to the launch of the REN 21 and the 2022 and UNECE and Renewable Energy Status Report. Let me begin with the energy sector of Georgia, and which is developing in the direction of the low emission and economy. And our aim and is full and effective and utilization of the tremendous and TP and renewable energy and potential. Historically, and Georgia has a good experience of the hydropower development, and our major and hydropower plants in Guri is operating and since the 17 of the last century. And currently, small and medium and large and hydropower plants are operating with the total installed capacity of the more than 3,000 installed capacity, as well as the one pilot wind power plant with the installed capacity of the 20 megawatts. However, to meet an increasing energy demand and overcome the winter and deficit, and to decrease the dependence of the on imported energy resources, we are developing an additional generation units. Currently, in the total 155 renewable energy projects, in hydro and wind and solar are under the development. This total installed capacity of this project is 5,000 and more than 5,000 megawatts, and approximately electricity generation is around 20 terawatt hour. To be able to absorb all planning generation and to improve the reliability of the connection and between an eastern and western part of Georgia power system at the same time, and to become a regional hub for electricity and transit reliability and 10 years and network and development plan for 2022 and 2032. The development of the renewable energy sources is imperative and for ensuring and continuous energy security of Georgia, due to a majority and domestic electricity production being centered around the renewable energy and hydropower and production. The country has defined renewable energy development as one of the priorities for the sector. This hasn't been reflected in strategy and policy documents, such as main and direction of the state and policy in the energy sector of Georgia. with the further reforms, and after the signing of the association agreement, also energy community agreement is in June and in June and 2014. As regards an energy community treaty, it was in 2017. Several important legislation and the support and measures have been implemented by Georgia, such as renewable energy law based of the renewable energy directives of 2009, net metering programs, support scheme and decrease, and so on. Furthermore, as the draft integrated and national energy and the climate change plan of Georgia envisages the promotion of renewable energy sources through relevant and measures and concentrated decarbonization and direction. The measures and directed and towards and supporting the promoting renewable energy in electricity and heating and cooling and transport. And we believe that energy sector and development in Georgia is promoting a sustainable energy development and will respond and sustainable development goals in the future. Our effort and will evolve and strengthen in the frame of regional cooperation with the strong and support of international donor and financial organization and fruitful in cooperation and with neighboring countries. Thank you again. Thank you so much, and for international organizations and including REN 21 and DENA and UNECE and Energy Community and others, and your cooperation, your support is very important for us. As Vifu mentioned, and 1 year ago when we had a very important meeting, it was a hard talk and in renewable energy. We introduced and challenges into entities in this process, and of course, and your experience also and your support, and it's very important for us. Finally, thank you for your attention. I hope and the next meeting and will be in person in Georgia in somewhere, and because I think and renewable energy also and decarbonization and energy efficiency, they are very key and measures and key activities, and for us it's very important for Georgia. Thank you again. I hope and this meeting and will be very successful for each participant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margarita. I really appreciate it, and very interesting and important insights from Georgia, which is of course a big part of the report as well. I'd like to invite our next speaker, and maybe in between, we have 2 more speakers left. I'm aware that officially we are, coming closer to the end, but I do hope you will all bear with me and with us until we finish hearing from the 2 speakers and then sending the link to the report in the chat. So please give us maybe a few extra minutes. But in the meantime, I would like to invite Tamara Bajfuza, who's with the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Tamara, over to you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for this opportunity to share with this impressive audience what is happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina with renewables. As many of you know, in the past period, activities on the transposition of obligations from the new energy package, Clean Energy for All Europeans, have been initiated, which brings a new set of obligations for all contracting parties of the energy community and for Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. When it comes to renewables, of course, the most important obligation is complete transposition and implementation of RED II directive. And as in the meantime, what was happening and what Rana also mentioned in her presentation, positive developments with renewables in Bosnia and Herzegovina have been identified. And we are happy to say that according to all calculations, Bosnia and Herzegovina has fulfilled its previous target of 40% share of renewables in final energy consumption by 2020. In order to further define development of renewables, of utmost importance is drafting of National Energy and Climate Plan until 2030, so-called NECP, and we are doing this at the moment and hoping to have this document adopted by the end of this year. After very detailed analysis within this NECP process, a final proposal of very ambitious targets for 2030 have been prepared, including renewable target. and negotiations are currently underway with European Commission. And like Naida mentioned, we are expecting these targets to be adopted by the end of this year. What was also happening in the meantime is adoption of new laws on renewables. As you know, Bosnia and Herzegovina is consisted of one district and two entities. And in July, Brčko district adopted its new law on renewables. Also in February, Republika Srpska as one entity adopted the new renewables law. And we are expecting the second entity, Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to adopt the same law in the coming days. What we are also planning in the next period is finalization of establishment of market-oriented incentive mechanisms, feed-in premiums and auctions. And also what will be happening in the next period is introduction of new market players, prosumers and energy communities, especially renewable energy communities, are important for this discussion because of these new laws I mentioned. Since citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina are only now getting the opportunity to be active players in the market, we have, let's say, new set of problems that's emerging in terms that wider population is still not aware of the possibilities of these new roles they can take, and they still don't know the whole benefits they bring. Actions at the local community level, as can be seen from numerous EU examples, can have the most significant positive effects. Therefore, it is important to raise awareness in Bosnia and Herzegovina that through engaging in energy communities, and especially renewable energy communities, participants work together to meet their own energy needs, offering renewable energy to community members at affordable prices, and thus raise the share of renewable energy in overall share of consumed energy. What is clear in the future is that Bosnia and Herzegovina, like other countries, like mentioned in this report, will have to mobilize all potentials of renewable energy sources, and involvement of both large and small producers will become necessary to ensure energy security and independence, and engagement of individuals through their own production of electricity will be crucial in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamara. Very interesting indeed to hear about Bosnia and Herzegovina, and very nice to have you here. Really appreciate it. So finally, from our list of speakers, I'd like to invite somebody, as I mentioned, who's a very key person in this project and has been part of the project management team alongside us at REN21, Mr. Gianluca Sambucini. So Gianluca has been, the key collaborator with us and the brain behind helping this happen, especially since he's part of GERE, which is a group of experts on renewable energy. But thank you, Gianluca, for everything also that you've helped with this project. But I'll now leave the floor to you so you can bring some perspectives of your own to this discussion.
Thank you, Vibu, and thank you, colleagues. It's really a pleasure to be here. And of course, it has been a pleasure to working for so many years with REN21. And the report is definitely a result of this long-standing cooperation. And we can say that we have really a very positive result. And since our first report in 2015, there is now a baseline which proves with reliable data how the UNECE region has observed an important scale-up in the uptake of renewable energy technologies in a region that counts 300 million of people. And this data baseline has been instrumental since also the creation of the group of experts on renewable energy, the UNECE Renewable Energy Group of Experts, has been instrumental for experts and major stakeholders, international and national actors, to have reliable data for policy making, for building capacities, and overall working for increasing the investments in the sector. The group of experts has been working in various activities. One is really this tracking data, and mainly with the REN21 UNECE Renewable Energy Status Report. So we had 3 editions. but the group has been also working and trying to facilitate the exchange of experiences, best practices, various lessons learned. And then we work with a group of experts in the countries, mainly through multi-stakeholder dialogues, the so-called hard talks. And we had we had so far 10 hard talks in Georgia, in Ukraine, in Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Serbia. And in the last year, we had also in Albania, in Georgia, Serbia, and Moldova. And this has been done in cooperation with different partners in the past and most recently, but also in the past with REN21 and with DINA. We had also matchmaking mechanism. This was done also in various occasions in Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, mainly with REN21, but also with the DEFCO and also with other colleagues of the Environment Division. We have been working also on the water and the energies nexus approach. With the hard talks, basically, we were able to support countries in speeding up some of their desired processes to make the necessary changes to further progress renewable energy deployment, also to diversify and to improve the security of supply and the development of an attractive market for renewable energies. For some countries, data and the use of data, especially through the hard talks, were of help to establish a specific renewable energy targets, approve a dedicated legislation, to launch a round of auctions, to focus on more sensitive issues such as the environmental impact, the need for a water energy nexus approach, and also to consider the more effective way for strengthening the infrastructure that is needed for increased uptake of renewable energy. We had a number, and I will mention only some focus that we had recently that shows also the various level of development and the attention given by the countries to the sector. We had quite recently in 2022 a hard talk in Moldova, where the focus was on resilience and flexibility options in the energy system. The resilience is a topic, of course, very important in these days, and I think the renewable energy as an additional element or strengthening this element of resilience, in addition, of course, to climate change and also to the contribution of the Sustainable Development Agenda. In Moldova, among the recommendations, there was also proposed that a comprehensive power system plan should be finalized as soon as possible, and also align the future grid reinforcements and extensions with the planned deployment of renewable energy capacities in order to ensure an efficient system integration. We had also another hard talk in Serbia, always within the last year, and the focus was mainly on the recent net metering scheme and also on the upcoming renewable energy auctions. I must say that in the past, the hard talks was also used to launch renewable energy auctions, and this was the case of Kazakhstan, and that we have been seeing also from the data that basically there's been a really a quite important and rapid progress in increasing the renewable energy uptake and the share of renewable energy in the country like Kazakhstan, still quite low, but I mean in absolute terms there's been a really quite a good increase. In Georgia, we have been hearing the focus was on building support for investments in renewable energy. We have been seeing, but this is in all the 17 countries, that the investments are not sufficient, and there is a need for increasing in order to really to have the substantive increase of renewable energy uptake that is needed in order also to meet the targets and all the various global commitments. At that time, in Georgia, a key recommendation that I would like to mention was the need to establish a long-term policy strategy and setting a long-term renewable energy targets that will provide clear signals to investors. Of course, long-term policy is essential for investors, otherwise they will move to other markets. Another hard talk that was quite relevant was in Albania, was a bit more than a year ago, and was focused on the uptake and integration, harmonization of renewable energy with the electricity system. And among the recommendation was also that renewable energy zones should consider an integrated approach to renewable energy development together with land use for agriculture, and especially when considering the large-scale photovoltaic plants. Clearly, all these multi-stakeholders dialogues prove the importance of historical and potential data and trends that, of course, allow a formulated and evidence-based development pathway for all those that have a role for sound decision-making and sector development. Of course, as a UNECE, we remain available to provide more information. I can provide directly and to respond to the requests of other countries for specific renewable energy talks, of course, in cooperation with REN21 and DINA. And I would like at this point only to mention that the information and data available in the report that we just launched will be also part of the discussion at the 9th session of the group of experts on renewable energy on 6th and 7th October within the UNECE Sustainable Energy Expert Week. I would like at this point to conclude and to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gianluca. It's always very good to hear about these perspectives because you've been working with the region and with the countries for a very long time. I'd like to, we're nearing the end of today's event, but there's some very important last things to mention. So I'd like to invite back Kamila Nabieva, but also Rana together, because Kamila and I will kind of co-lead towards the end. So Rana, but first we'd like to hear from you maybe on what you thought were key takeaways from today.
So I guess like a key takeaway, I think, is really the amount of players doing great things on renewable energy that exists, and really interesting perspectives from the countries that also really echo very much with our findings. We have more at a meta level, but I think an important part is when we're speaking about renewable energy statistics, it is actually very concrete choices governments take, and they do this for economic and societal benefits. Obviously also for climate change, but I think in the region we see really this geopolitical part. So I think building basically on those players, and also the fact that continuous collaboration is so important. I think one part is very much about inviting you to stay in the process. The team is going to share the link basically to the full report. Please don't hesitate to get back to us with questions if you would like to use the report, have ideas, how to make it evolve, contribute. But then the other part also is I think there's lots of important learnings of the regions and sharing of experiences that can be really important, not only for the regional and regional development, but abroad. And so I invite you to also join our global community with regard to this, especially as we are going to kick off basically the new annual reporting and tracking on the status of renewable energy in a new format. So join us to discover it end of this month. There will be a report launched. And then join us for dialogue and debate. I think it has been underlined by all speakers basically how important the exchange between multi-stakeholders is important to drive this thing, to find solutions, to accelerate the implementation, but to also create a shared understanding of the vision we have for the future. And here I invite you to join us at the Spanish International Renewable Energy Conference, where we'll have a multi-stakeholder dialogue at an international level from 20 to 23rd of February in Madrid, Spain. So looking forward to continue the discussion. Over to you, Wiebe.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you so much. So Camilla and I are back for some very final comments, I guess. Camilla, would you like to maybe mention for the questions that were unanswered, and then
Yes. Thanks a lot, Rana, and thanks a lot for all the participants for joining us. You have probably seen in the chat that our lead author was very active, making sure to answer each and single question that was asked in the chat. But I'm pretty sure that while reading our great report, you will have more questions coming up. So for that reason, we're sharing the link to the report. So Jessica has just shared the link to the report in the chat, but also the email address, unec.report@ran21.net, where you can send your questions to that we will make sure to answer. Thanks, Victor.
Absolutely, and maybe one more point, that this isn't just as everybody has mentioned, that we had a great community of people who contributed to the report. It's a living document, so if you do see questions, comments which come up still for the next few months, we will still try to integrate them into the online version. So please do not hesitate to let us know if you have new data, especially on investments, since Rana mentioned it already, but it was a huge challenge for us to get concrete data on this. I'd like to, before we end, bring up somebody who hasn't been spotlighted yet, but introduce you to another very, very important person in the report process, Anastasia Iannou, who has been working with us from the University of Glasgow to put this together. So Anastasia, thank you so much for everything and for helping us put together this great discussion.
Thank you, Wiebe, for this very flattering introduction. It's been a fascinating experience to be part of the team developing this very important report for the UNECE region. And I believe that this will offer also lessons for other regions. There are significant challenges in the region and also global challenges in energy security and climate change impacts. So I believe renewable energy and also energy security monitoring and reporting the status is very important to also report the progress. So I would like to thank the RAN21 team for this excellent experience and collaboration, and to opportunity to work with excellent colleagues, Rana, Wiebe, Jessica, and many more. I would like to also thank UNECE and Gianluca, Dina, Tibor and Lawrence, and also the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action for the support of this in this report. Thank you all.
Thank you, Anastasia. And as we're signing off, it's important to also mention that this was one of two events that are happening today back to back. This one was in collaboration with the energy community. The other one is a global launch, so please do feel free to join. And then there is more happening. Gianluca already mentioned the group of experts in renewable energy. There's an annual session on the 6th and 7th of October taking place in Geneva. So we will continue to discuss, especially with the focus countries there. And if I'm sure there'll be opportunities to join. Now, as we say goodbye, I think it's really important to bring up some of the other key people, which we had a diverse authoring team. So we're going to quickly spotlight everybody as much as we can for a second, so that you can see how many brains and colleagues were involved behind this successful publication. And of course, you see their names and you see their faces. So in the future, it's really important to continue building up community in this region, because we at RAN21 strongly believe in the power of community to advance renewable action. So reach out to them, reach out to us, and we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So now I'd like to bring on stage Lawrence Green, who is a senior expert and project manager at the German Energy Agency, and a very big part of this UNECE RE Uptake project. So somebody we've worked very closely with in the last 18 months or so. Thanks, Lawrence. We look forward to hearing from you. I think.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good. Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Vibu, or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. As Vibu kindly introduced, my name is Lawrence Green, and I'm working for the German Energy Agency, or DENA. We have been working together with REN21 and also with UNECE closely over the last 18 months, or almost 24 months, working on this UNECE Renewable Energy Uptake Project. Part of the project was, of course, the great REN21 UNECE status update report, which we're going to talk about shortly. And there were also the included hard talks that we held over the course of the last 2 years. So we had hard talks with Serbia, Albania, Georgia, and the Republic of Moldova. And I'm happy to see that a few of our partners and these countries are also joining the call. So fantastic. Thanks for joining. And we, the DENA, also produced a similar study looking at the status and uptake of renewable energy, which is a little bit different to the REN21 report. We sort of provided a more broader analysis of the entire region, whereas this report we're going to learn about today focuses on the 17 regions, as was already talked about. So yeah, I would like just to say thank you again for the cooperation and collaboration with all the partners in the last 24 months over the course of the project. And it looks like this report from REN21 really does provide some valuable insights. I mean, we learned from the hard talks and from the project itself that although there are some similarities in the regions or the different countries, there are also some great differences in market structures and renewable potential and resources and policies and support and also political drive. But through the hard talks as well, we see there's a lot of fundamental, systematic energy sector aspects that are applicable for many countries in the region. And that's where a lot of this value lies, in learning from similar systems, and not only from broad international experience from Germany per se, but also from regional experience, and that's where the value really lays. So we look forward to learning more about the report and also to working in the UNECE region in the future. So if you have any questions regarding our study and the REN21 reports, of course, feel free to reach out to us. And for future collaboration on looking at driving the energy transition further in the region. So that's enough from me. Thank you, Bibu, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lawrence. And indeed, this is very exciting. This is a very exciting month with 2 of these studies launching nearly at the same time, and there are differences which can really build on each other. So I'm going to now move to the next part, which is the presentation of the report's key findings. And for this, I'd like to invite back on stage, Rana Adib, the REN21 Executive Director, as she will lead us through the findings. A quick note that I'm sure everybody will have questions, so kindly leave them in the chat. And after Rana's presentation, Camilla, whom you met at the beginning, will moderate a short Q&A session, and we'll invite also the lead author, Alexandra Novikova, along with Rana, to help answer these questions. Depending on the volume, we may not get to all of the questions, but we do promise to get to some of them, and then the rest by email. So over to you, Rana.
Thank you so much, Vibu. Yeah, the exciting moment, sharing the insights of the report. And for doing this, I'll share my screen and ask my colleagues to tell me whether. Great. It's about renewables now. REN21 is about renewables now, but I think also the introductory remarks have clearly underlined the urgency around the development of renewable energy and moving away from fossil fuel for a diversity of reasons. Before coming to the reports, which we are launching today, I think it's really interesting to see where REN21 comes from and why we're also looking into the region, but what the principles are which we're basically applying in our engagement in the region with our partners there. So REN21 is a global community of players from governments, industry, NGOs, and research and academia. And all those players working together to make basically the shift to renewable energy happen now. Why is it important? I think it's really the DNA of Rentschler to have those players together. Because when we're speaking about a transition towards renewable energy, an efficient and renewable-based system, it's not only an energy system, but it is the whole economy and society that is changing. So indeed, those players are really important to engage with when we are driving those changes. So more than 3,000 community members are working together. And what we do is really very much what we also did here with the report, is building crowdsourced data and information, decentralized intelligence, sharing the perspectives, experiences, insights, to then inform and influence decision makers, but also make basically the way we think about renewable energy evolve through dialogue and debates. So this is annual publications, but it is also continuous dialogues, and this leads me directly to what we have done in the region. So I'll start with the report because this is a concrete output, and it's really creating a baseline, I think, for renewable energy development in the region. So this 2022 UNECE Renewable Energy Status Report is the third edition. There is a continuous reporting since 2015, and I spoke about crowdsourced data and information here. I think what is exciting is really we had 260 plus contributors to this report, and I think that is something which is really amazing, not only because it also shows the wealth of information that is there, but also because this process has contributed to build a community of players, passionate people, interested people in renewable energy, and create opportunities to collaborate. So the report features 17 countries plus a Kosovo, and we are looking at, basically there's a regional overview. We're looking to the policy landscape, market and industry developments, specifically also distributed renewable energy for energy access, because this is really a big topic also in several countries of the region we are looking at and focus countries, and energy efficiency. I pause on the energy efficiency and come to the others later. It is very clear that when we are moving to a renewable-based system, there are three pillars to it. Energy saving, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. And it's very clear that those need to go hand in hand. So that's clearly the reason why in this report, we also look at the energy efficiency developments, in particular on the policy side too. Investment flows are obviously key, so we're looking this. I'm already mentioning that this is certainly an area where we have a larger gap in terms of data and quality of data. For the first time, we have included a report on the current thinking about the future of renewables. Why? We see that it is not only about looking what is happening, but also creating the shared vision and understanding what needs to happen so that we can really accelerate the renewable energy development. Oops, something weird has happened here on the design, but well. I think it's important to mention that the report is part of a larger process. So the UNECE Renewable Energy Uptake Project 2022 with partners Rentschler, UNECE, and DENA, and supported by the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs for Climate Action. Lawrence has already mentioned the other report, which will be launched soon. And we have undertaken a UNECE Renewable Energy Hard Talks in Albania, Georgia, Serbia, and Moldova. Why am I mentioning this here? It's very much building on bringing the diversity of perspectives and those players together to speak about the things that work well, need to be improved, but also having the difficult discussions to really accelerate the change. So, and I'm very excited that we have some participants basically who are participating also in our launch events. Now, first question, why does this region matter? Obviously, the region matters. We're not questioning this. But it is really interesting. So when we're looking into global renewable energy development, this region does not appear as a leading region in the statistics, etc. First of all, we have 4% of the population, of the world population living in this region, 310 million people. But what is really interesting, when we look at the region, we have kind of the global economy and reality represented in the region when we look into the overall energy situation. I'll come to this later. One other part is very clearly, this region has a massive untapped potential. And I think this is also why UNECE has, since many years, started working on tapping into the potential on the energy efficiency and renewable side with a specific attention. And the report is helping to measure that we're working in the right direction, hopefully. The other part, and this is this microcosm part, we see that in this region, and so if we look at 18 countries, there are 5 countries that are producing oil and gas, and the other countries are highly dependent on the fossil fuel imports. So this is really an aspect that is a reality, and is also, and I think that's a particularity of the region, most of the discussion on renewable energy uptake are actually not driven by the climate discussion, but are very much driven by an energy security and energy sovereignty discussion. So this is really something which is very present. Another part is there is a need for a stable and secure energy supply. So historically, the energy infrastructure in those countries mean that there is 100% electricity access. This said, there is quality issues in terms of supply. And we're also facing in some countries real energy poverty. So surveys showing that households are not able to pay their energy bills, especially when we're also looking into remote areas, but also when we are looking into not only electricity, but the whole energy situation. Ensuring a good quality of heating, for instance, is a real topic in the region. I think that the last couple of months have also highlighted more the key role of energy and how energy discussions cannot be dissociated of discussions on economic development, but also societal development. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we see that the whole energy security and sovereignty discussion has been very much accentuated. I'll quickly pause here because obviously this situation has short-term effects on basically, for instance, the installed capacities, renewable energy power capacities in Ukraine, which really reduces for the moment basically the capacities in the overall countries, because Ukraine is a leading country on renewable energy development. With clear questions on basically risk perception of investment. But when we see at this at the positive side, the importance of energy and also the importance of accelerating basically renewable energy uptake has been very much accentuated by this situation. So yeah. One other aspect to mention, especially when we're looking to Western Balkan, is the reality on air pollution. And this is very much driven by discussions also at subnational and city level, but also of citizens. The fact that the bad air quality and the health impact it has is clearly at the forefront of discussions and life of people, has really shown the necessity to move away from fossil fuel and to a cleaner and more sustainable energy supply. I spoke about the fact that basically we have the situation of 5 oil and gas producing countries. These are the 5 countries that have self-sufficiency. From those countries, from all countries we looked at, all the others are highly dependent on fossil fuel parts. And you can see it here. So the yellow part is the renewable energy share, and the dark orange, so the orange part is basically the fossil fuel part in total final energy consumption. What I think is really important to mention too is, in addition to this, on the dependence, so the energy sovereignty and security discussion is happening at the regional level, but also when we are going to some countries, because the reality is that many other countries are also highly dependent on hydropower. And I think Olga has mentioned it, climate change has really led to the fact that there is a need to also diversify this reliance on one sole energy source and bring other energy sources in. Another specificity, I think, that's a real specificity of the country, and again, historically explained. We're looking at countries that are highly energy intense. You see it here on the left side, we have the focus countries. On the right side, there is the energy intensity in EU27 and OECD. So the countries here, energy intensity exceeds much the averages we see here. And even though basically the energy intensity has already sharply declined during the last decades. What is the message here? I spoke about the 3 pillars of saving, efficiency, and renewables. There is a massive potential to improve basically the shift to sustainable energy by addressing energy efficiency. Draggers and drivers in the region, and I think that is something which is really interesting because we discover, I mentioned already, you don't see decarbonization, for instance, here. I'm not saying that decarbonization is not a topic. When we're looking at the countries, 4 countries have, for instance, a target on net zero emissions or carbon neutrality, and also there are some high emitting countries located in the region. However, when we really, in the exchange and the data collection, we really see that it's not at the forefront, it's not the key driver of renewable energy development. Fossil fuel and import dependency is something which is much more at the forefront. When we are looking at the fact that there are others, so energy security is at the forefront as one of the drivers. But then we also see that there are basically subsidies for fossil fuel and artificially low tariff that are hampering basically renewable energy development just because of the competition with very low tariffs on the electricity side. There is another dragger, which is the power of conventional energy. And again, the reality of a few oil and gas producing countries is not only a question of economies around it, but also power dynamics. This is one part. But there is another part, and we spoke about this very much in the Hard Talks, is about myth around the fact that moving away from a conventional source, so to say, to renewable energy raises other questions, and there needs to be much awareness raising still to also increase public acceptance. Investment risk and uncertainties, which I mentioned, that are very much linked also to policy and regulatory framework, and in some countries, clear opposition to renewable energy. Now, on the driving side, energy security, sovereignty, I'm not going to detail. I would like to pause on CBAM, the cross-border adjustment mechanism. Why? Because I think this is something which is really interesting, which we see in the region and is accentuated by the current situation. We see here that trade policies can highly influence government's decisions on energy. The CBAM leads to the fact that many countries of the focus countries are engaging in the renewable energy transition because it allows them to reduce the footprint of the goods they are exporting basically into the EU to comply with the standards under CBAM. So we see that trade policies can really, influence energy decisions. Energy poverty and health and air quality are clear drivers. Now, what does this mean for renewable energy developments? What has been happening? And I think I'll start with the good news. There are really good news. So there is a breakthrough growth in renewable power. That's a reality. 20.7 gigawatt of capacity added in the last 5 years, leading to total installed capacities of 106 gigawatt in 2021. That is something which is really interesting and important. And what is also really interesting is we see that historically this has been driven very much by hydropower. For the first time, solar PV and wind are actually the reason of this uptake, which we can see here. And I think it's interesting to see this because solar wind capacity have grown dramatically. Solar has grown 10-fold and wind 7-fold. And this is very much driven by clear cost reduction on the renewable energy side and or on the solar PV and wind side. And it's also reflected by policy developments we see. So many countries have engaged in auctions to really tap into this potential of least cost solutions. So for the first time, these technologies overtook hydropower. But the reason is also an increasing understanding of the need to diversify basically from a sole source. This growth has been backed by many factors, and I'll not go through all of them, but favorable policies. I think the countries, the leading countries, Russian Federation, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan, in terms of renewable power uptake, have really put a lot of policy attention in to create the right market conditions and develop renewable energy. That's a really important learning, and I'll just pause on the example of Kazakhstan. When you look at Kazakhstan 5 years ago, there was almost no solar PV and wind capacities. So we had hard talks a couple of years ago in Kazakhstan, but there has also clearly been an attention from players active in the region to bring the players together and start a shared vision, I guess, on renewable energy uptake and what it can bring to the country. And as a result, there has not only been an ambition in terms of policies, but clear engagement in the policy and regulatory framework in the implementation also, and a focus very much also on solar PV because of the decentralized nature of renewables. So I think that's really something which is extremely a very good example. Now, unfortunately, it's not only good news. There is also not so good news, and this is partly nicely said. What is the not so good news? When we are looking at the overall energy demand, the share of renewable energy has basically been unchanged since 2014. There are many reasons for it. We see positive developments in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Ukraine, and Armenia. But this is it, so to say. The reason for it from the renewable side is clearly a slowdown in hydropower generation, increase in motorization, which means like also an increase in energy demand. And then there is another part of the story to it. When we're looking into the total fund energy, we're not only looking at electricity, and most of the attention has been on the power sector, but there are two sectors that are basically, or two energy demand that are very much lagging behind. It's the heating, cooling, and the transport sectors lagging behind. That is a trend we also see at the global level. More or less, those energy demands represent 80% of the energy demand and have very little attention. You see on the left side, basically, the share of renewable energy for heating and cooling, and on the right side for the transport sector. Ukraine, just as a leading country on transport, has a share of 2.2% of renewable energy in the transport demand, which clearly shows that there is a need to broaden basically the discussion from power to the energy sector. And then the reality is policies are really important, market developments too, but you need investments. And here we clearly see that the investment levels have been fluctuating significantly over the last years. So with the result that in 2018, we only come back now basically to 2013 levels. So $7.2 billion in the region, just as a comparison to $284 billion in the same year globally. One thing to mention here, two things to mention. Obviously, with the cost reductions, it is not directly proportionally reflected in terms of installed capacities. But another part is finance investment flows are very complex, and there is a real need in the region to improve the data on investment flow to really capture everything that is happening. It's one of the areas where we significantly and seriously need to improve the data situation. Another reality and learning is that policy play a key role, and it's important to look back to look ahead. What is the message here? Targets are not enough, and I think this has been really a big message. From those 18 countries, there are 15 countries that have a national renewable energy target. So that's a positive news. When you're looking to the power sector, we see that it's 76 countries that have a renewable power target. Only 23% have basically reached this target so far. When we're looking into transport, 41 countries, 41% of the countries have a renewable target in transport. No focus countries has reached this, and you have seen how low the share is. So there's really a need to also increase ambition, but also action toward this. And when we're looking into heating and cooling, 35% of the countries have a target here, and only 67% have reached this target. I think heating and cooling is really important to pause on in the countries we're looking at. Why? Because we see that to a large extent, especially in the residential area, basically there is a reliance on traditional biomass, which is not only contributing to climate change, but also desertification has a clear impact on anti-poverty. There's a gender component to it, etc., which is really there. And addressing basically and improving and building on decentralized renewable energy to address energy poverty in those sectors is really important. On the right side, you see ambition is the start. That's very clear. But we need clear policies. We need to work on implementation in the region, improving permitting processes to attract investment and have market developments, or to create the right market conditions and attract investment. And this is a circle and needs to happen because the ambition is not enough. And we don't want to sit here together in 2 years' time and look back and see that we did not move in the right direction. Another aspect is that policies need to be broadened. I underlined the fact, and the current situation really shows this. When we're looking into the energy security and sovereignty question, when we're looking into the energy price question, we see this creates energy poverty, but we also see that the interruptions of energy supply mean interruptions of supply chains, of goods. And this is directly impacting, and we see it in particular on the food part, directly impacting on other sectors. And I think that is something which is really has contributed to the fact that globally and in the region, there is an increased understanding how crucial addressing energy and sustainable energy is for our economic activities. The example of the carbon border adjustment mechanism really shows how basically energy is interlinked with trade, and trade policies can clearly have an impact on choices on the energy side. The other part, and I think specifically in the region, is really this food and energy water nexus. So a very specific attention to the agriculture sector, which is a key energy consuming sector, but again, where energy and trade is the supply of goods and essential goods is directly linked, especially when we're looking into Caucasus, Western Balkans, and Central Asia. And the other part of broadening it is very clearly, when we speak about energy security and sovereignty, it's very clear that renewable energy is everywhere, but we also need the technology to transform this into an energy that can be used. So building up domestic regional supply chains on the renewable energy technologies is important and needs to be at the heart and attention of industrial and economic policy. Why? Because there is opportunities in those regions to also not only export resources and materials, but use them for energy, create a green product that can be exported, and create real local value and jobs. So there are different components to it and reasons why it is important to broaden it. What is the overall message and conclusion? Renewable energy has actually a value beyond the energy supply. And I think that is something which is a very important message, and where we also have concrete data underlying this. When we're looking at the resilience, we often speak about the climate resilience, and that's a reality. The decentralized nature of renewable energy, sustainability of it, really increases climate resilience. When we are looking specifically in the situation we have in Ukraine, we also see that there is a certain resilience to shocks and conflicts. because of the decentralized nature. So today in the Ukraine, the capacities have been solar PV and wind capacities have been destroyed. But the reality is that when we are looking basically at the plants, so to say, at the capacities, they have been partially destroyed and are for the moment not operational, but in a post-conflict conditions can be re-operationalized quite quickly. The other part is another resilience, because there is a possibility of diversifying the energy sources, but also an economic resilience to fluctuating fossil fuel prices. And then the decentralization that clearly allows to serve remote areas and address energy poverty. And what we also see in this context allows players that are historically not engaged in the energy developments, like subnational governments, cities, citizens, the private sector, energy consumers, to really engage. So there's also some countries where we really have energy community, prosumer development that are happening. And then what do we need to do? Because why do we look at the data? It's to really also move forward. We clearly need more investment and more stable investment in energy supply, but not only in supply, but also energy infrastructure, so electricity grids, balancing capacity, storage, and so on. It is highly urgent, especially given the role of heating in the region, to move beyond electricity. And then the non-energy part, which is building technology supply chains domestically and regionally, to really also build on the economic opportunity renewable energy presents, but also clearly have a real energy security and sovereignty addressed in a holistic way. And for this, and I think this is what is interesting about basically this collaboration and the community coming together, it's increasing the regional cooperation. And this means like between the countries and the sub-regions in the region, but also looking at the region in the overall regional context and the global context, because we clearly see that in this globalized world, basically we're not disconnected, we're all connected. And to really advance this is continuously close data gaps and increase basically the data quality on heating, cooling, transport, and investment. And this is my closing slide, and I look forward to hear more of our country experts to learn more about your realities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rana, for this comprehensive presentation. Of course, we should be aware that there's no way to cover all the results of the report in 20 minutes. That's why we invite you to discover the report by yourself after the event. We promise that we will take a couple of questions during the Q&A session right after the presentation. And I'd like to start with the first question by Olga from Climate Action Network, Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia. So she wrote that this is a question addressed to Rana. Who do you see as the main stakeholders in the energy transition to renewable energy in this region, both within the countries, but most importantly, abroad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. I think so within the countries, and I think I'll take the example of Kazakhstan. I feel most importantly, it is about bringing the different players together. So the governments are key, and here I would say like not only at the national level, but also at the subnational level, especially when we're looking also on citizens' involvement, creating societal acceptance. We saw that that in some countries we really have to increase the acceptance of renewable energy. So the involvement of those players is really fundamental to have a sustained renewable energy development. But then, and I think this is directly about the industry and the markets, it's clearly about bringing basically the industry to the table. And here I think it's important to underline that it's not only the industry and industry players and the utilities from the energy side, but also the ones who can really see this as an opportunity of developing new market activities and economic activities. So really directly linked to, for instance, technology supply chains. increasing energy efficiency and renewable energy in buildings. So, for instance, you see heat pump developments, insulation, etc. Now, globally, I guess, like, or outside of the region, and I think this is directly linked, is we clearly need higher investment and more sustained investment. So it is important to obviously have like a local investment, domestic investment, but here players like EBRD, for instance, can be fundamental. When we are looking into the current energy situation in Europe, it is very clear that a collaboration with the European Union and the members is key. And here again, I think on the regional collaboration also on technology sovereignty, because we are facing very similar questions, for instance, or we are encountering very similar questions on technology sovereignty in Western Europe, as you would have basically in the region, in the countries we are looking at. Yes. I don't know. I think I could probably go on, but I guess like Sasha, maybe you have like other compliments to bring to this too.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'm Alexandra Novikova, and I'm a lead author of the report. And it's my pleasure to support REN 21 with this fantastic activity in our region. What I would like to add to what already Rana said, that energy transition and sustainable energy development is not a task for a particular group of people. This is a task for all members of our society, including individuals, as Rana said, but also the governments, obviously, but at all levels, at national, regional, national level, the industry, the financial sector who will finance and invest money into it, and other sectors. What I would like to really emphasize once again, this is the role of the industry, because I'm not sure that our industrial partners who are on this call yet fully understand the consequences of the global energy transition for their businesses in the future. But on one side, they're the key of this transition, but on the other side, they will be affected from different perspectives with that. And in particular, as an example, I would like to refer to the statement of Rana that the European Union introduced so-called CBAM, the carbon adjustment border mechanisms of the European Union, which tries to make equal the carbon content of energy-intensive goods produced in the European Union with those which are imported, so that to create a fairly competitive environment for its domestic producers, because they are covered by the emission trading scheme of the EU, but companies, importers to the EU are not. And that means that basically now from, if not yet, but progressively, companies which import energy-intensive products will have to comply with that. And the mechanism is already known that they will have to purchase carbon certificates if to compensate for the difference in carbon content. What does it mean for them? It means that that basically they have to, additionally to the cost of production and transportation, they also have to carry this additional payment expenditure to the budget of the European Union. That means that it is in the interest of our industry in the region to invest into energy efficiency, invest into the deployment of renewable energy as soon as possible, so that whenever if you are targeted by this mechanism, you are already on the way and you invest in your domestic economies rather than into the economy of the European Union. With this, the governments have the obvious role in supporting and establishing the mechanisms which are supporting the industry with that. Furthermore, I would like to add that this is the niche for businesses, as Rana mentioned, to produce domestically renewable energy technologies. And these are not only high-tech things like solar panels or wind turbines, but this concerns also if they imported from somewhere, concerns at least the production of some parts or assembly of these technologies, or such technologies as more simple, like energy efficiency heat stoves on biomass, because our region is still dependent on them. Furthermore, this is not only the production of renewable energy technologies, where business can take the role in, but also the maintenance and operation, because service contracts for these technologies over many years in terms of the expenditure are sometimes even higher than capex, than initial front cost. This is why this is again value added into your country. This again jobs, and this again various other benefits which your country will harvest. With this, I would like to close and thank you again for giving me the word. And if you have any further questions on the role of various participants, the governments, the industries, and donors who can support them in the process, we are very happy to assist you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra, and thanks a lot, Rana. I hope all the representatives and stakeholders that you are addressing to are on this call and making notes, and we'll make sure to hear the message and all the takeaways. We had another question on biomass, and I'll read it out very quickly from Justin Wanya. What are the basic requirements for the effective and efficient utilization of woody biomass energy? And I guess, Rana, you would like to take this question briefly.
Yes, without being a biomass expert, because this is a very specific question, but we're also very happy to guide you to some of our members who are experts here. But in principle, I think the whole use of biomass is a real complex topic. Why? We're speaking about the source that is competing in terms of utilization. So you use it for heating, you use it for construction, you use it even more for construction, you use it for paper production, and so on. And I think that is something which is, and there are many other activities, that is something which already shows a certain complexity on the source side. And here there are some standards, and I think also some countries that have lots of experiences on having clear standards here on how to forestate, deforestate, reforestate, because there is a real sustainability practice here. And I think Serbia has, for instance, been quite active on framing this and having standards. But also the Global Bioenergy Partnership, I think it's a good reference in terms of standards. The other part to it, and interestingly, also the part that makes a distinction when we're looking into official energy statistics between what is a traditional biomass or what is a modern biomass. One of the parameters is how we use basically this biomass for the production. So if you have like wood being used in just a normal fireplace, this is traditional biomass. Why? Because there is not a good efficiency, but also because there is major health impacts basically linked to this. And I think this is basically the other part of the standards is ensuring that the source is being used in modern stoves, efficient stoves, and whether we're speaking about Kirchhoff, heating, and so on. And so I'll point you, maybe we can add like some links into the chat to the World Bioenergy Association, for instance, the European Bioenergy Association, but also the Global Bioenergy Program partnerships, or Global Bioenergy Partnership, that have been specifically working on standards. I think maybe one thing to underline, the region we're looking at is highly dependent on traditional biomass. And some of the discussions we're having, especially in the European Union, on being very critical about biomass developments are to be taken serious, but it's also important to look into what the transition pathways are. Bioenergy today still represents a high share of renewable energy globally into especially the heating and cooling sector. And there are alternatives, so especially when we look into low electricity costs, this combined with heat pumps can be a good way forward. But one part very clearly is working very much on the efficiency and having good standards on producing and sourcing the biomass resource.
Thank you, Rana, Camilla, Alexandra, for that Q&A session. So we're going to move on to the next part because we're also aware of time, and we already apologize that we might go few minutes over, but the next section is very interesting. For the remaining questions that didn't get answered, we've noted them, and the team will try to answer as many as possible in the chat directly. And if there are any still left over, then we'll send them by email. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ainur Spanova, who's with the Kazakh Green Energy Association, and is here to share some experiences. With her, I'd also like to bring back Alexandra Novikova, as this might be done in a Russian English sort of way, and then Alexandra will help us translate in case there are portions in Russian for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Добрый день, уважаемые участники. Я хочу поблагодарить организаторов проекта UNECE и REN21 за такую очень полезную глобальную работу, которая позволяет экспертам во всем мире понимать, где мы находимся по развитию возобновляемой энергетики и куда мы движемся.
Dear participants, dear organizers, first of all, hello, and I would like to warmly thank you for the invitation as well as for the organization of this very important event and very important initiative, which make a change for our region.
Я хочу представиться, я Айнур Саспанова, являюсь председателем правления ассоциации ВИА Казак Грин из Казахстана. Мы с ассоциацией развиваем, помогаем строить рынок возобновляемой энергетики. Мы выпускаем ежеквартально журнал «Казак Грин», и на ежедневной основе у нас электронные новости публикуются на портале «Казак Грин».
So my name is Ainur Sospanova, and I'm a board member or a managing board member of an association of Kazakh renewable energy production. And we run regular activities associated with the promotion of renewable energy in media as well as many others. We, for instance, publish a regular issue of Kazakh Energy, right?
Если говорить о том, каковы планы развития возобновляемой энергетики Казахстана на долгосрочный период, то они достаточно амбициозные. Мы планируем к 2030 году долю возобновляемой энергетики довести до 15%, к 1935 году до 23%, и к 1960 году у нас есть глобальная задача стать углеродно-нейтральной страной.
Если говорить о if we would like to talk about the perspectives of renewable energy in Kazakhstan, these are really, really ambitious plans. And in particular, Kazakhstan set the target to increase the share of renewables in electricity production to 15% in 2030, to 35% by 2035, and to become carbon neutral economy by 2060.
Учитывая, что на текущий момент в Казахстане больше 60% угольной генерации, вы можете представить, насколько это тяжелая задача сделать углеродно-нейтральной страной.
If you can imagine, so to imagine how difficult it is for us to become carbon neutral, please take a note that more than 60% of our power production is from coal. This is why for us it's a really big challenge and very big ambition.
Немного хочу рассказать, где мы сейчас находимся. В Казахстане доля возобновляемой энергетики по состоянию на первое полугодие 2022 года составляет 4,5%.
Just to tell you where we are currently in Kazakhstan with the production of renewables, in the first half of this year, we had only 4.5% of renewables in the power, in the electricity generation of the country.
В стране действует 2,2 гигаватта мощностей возобновляемой энергетики.
In the country currently, about 2.2 gigawatt renewables are installed.
Буквально вчера была введена очередная ветровая станция 60 мегаватт в Алматинской области, в Чилике.
Just yesterday, they had a new recent development that one more new wind power plant was put into the operation or commissioned in the region of Almaty, right? And the capacity is about 60 megawatt.
Чем уникален данный проект? Он реализован на ветровой площадке, которая является одной из самой ветропотенциальной в мире. Среднегодовая скорость ветра на данной площадке 9-10 метров в секунду.
This is really a unique project because the place where the project is located is special and one of the most advantageous from the point of view of wind power production, because the wind speed there is between 9 and 10 meters per second.
Ну и если говорить о существующей нормативно-правовой базе по поддержке возобновляемой энергетики, то она началась с 2009 года.
If you will talk how we started this way, so then we have to mention that the development and adoption of the supporting legislation for renewables has started back to 2009.
С 2013 года в стране действует единый закупщик электрической энергии, оффтейкер, который покупает всю выработанную электроэнергию от возобновляемых источников энергии.
Since 2013, as a part of the supporting mechanism, the state established or announced a single public off-taker of renewable energy power, which is purchasing all renewable electricity produced in the country.
До 2017 года в стране действовали фиксированные тарифы, и единый закупщик закупал по фиксированным тарифам по 15-летним контрактам.
Until 2017, Kazakhstan has practiced the so-called feed-in tariff system, when the off-taker, which we just mentioned, was obliged to purchase renewable energy production according to the power purchase agreement, which were valid for 15 years.
Определена типовая форма PPA-контракта, которая позволяет инвесторам на ранней стадии понимать, в каких правилах игры он будет работать.
And furthermore, they really worked on the design of this power production agreement in a way that investors already from the beginning knew the rules of the game and how to play in this situation, so that they could understand the investment environment.
Инвесторы ВИИ могут подписывать приоритетные инвестиционные контракты, которые позволяют им получить налоговые преференции.
Investors could sign preferential contracts which would allow them to obtain supporting subsidies for the activities.
ВИИ имеет приоритетную диспетчеризацию, и системный оператор обязан принять весь объем выработанной электроэнергии, поставленной в сеть.
Renewable energy has dispatch priority in Kazakhstan, and the transmission system operator of Kazakhstan is obliged to take all renewable energy generated in the country.
Начиная с 2018 года ежегодно у нас в стране проводятся аукционы ВИИ, и в этом году в октябре-ноябре пройдут очередные аукционы на общую мощность 690 мегаватт.
Kazakhstan has been practicing auctions since 2018 on the annual basis, and for instance, this year they will auction the capacity of around 690 megawatts in October-November this year, with the assistance of EBRD, right? That I'm aware.
При активном содействии нашей ассоциации в этом году условия аукциона существенно улучшены. 100% тарифы индексируются с учетом доллара. Контракты подписываются на 20 лет. И также индексация периода строительства также включена.
It's pretty complex, so there are pretty comprehensive conditions of the auctions. The tariffs will be indexed according to the exchange rate. Kazakhstan has tenge and respectively exchange rate between tenge and dollars. There will be, the contracts are for 20 years, and there will be also additional various indexing in relation to different contractual parts of the agreement.
Все эти усилия позволяют выражать надежду, что в этом году аукционы пройдут в максимально конкурентной среде, учитывая, что две площадки на аукционы, документацию этих площадок были подготовлены экспертами Банка развития, Европейского банка реконструкции и развития.
Yeah, they truly believe that those auctions which will be conducted this year will be very competitive with the participation of high-quality organizations because for those two places auctioned for the production of renewables, the preparation of documentation and feasibility studies and like that were very high quality with the support and technical assistance of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development.
Конечно, есть большое количество барьеров, над которым мы сейчас работаем, и чтобы вы понимали, один из самых ключевых барьеров – это инфраструктура, которая не позволяет в больших количествах интегрировать станции возобновляемой энергетики.
Yeah, of course, we have numerous barriers in the country which hinder the large-scale deployment and particularly the integration to the grid.
То есть всего 4% возобновляемой энергетики на сегодняшний день, они оказывают существенное давление на энергосистему, но есть один большой плюс, который системный оператор уже сегодня отмечает. Все действия, которые мы делали за последние 5 лет, они дали положительный результат в плане того, что ВИЭ снижают энергодефицит, который в последние 3 года в Казахстане присутствует.
Да, Янук, нам нужно закругляться по чуть-чуть. Давай statement последний. So the current level of the current share of renewables in the electricity generation is about 4%, and even this small amount of renewable electricity is making significant pressure on the grid. However, at the same time, on the good side, that according to the information from the TSO, so transmission system operator, this was a very valuable experience, and they showed they gained significant results in terms of the deployment of renewable and doing it successfully.
Ну и последний тезис, который я хочу сказать, что развивать возобновляемую энергетику в отдельной стране невозможно, необходимо учитывать региональные планы соседей, поскольку энергосистема единая, и все, что происходит в Казахстане, влияет на соседние страны Узбекистан, Киргизию, Таджикистан, и точно так же их планы они будут влиять на Казахстан. То есть здесь важно объединяться.
And the very common statement, but extremely important, and Rana already said it, and we emphasized it also in our report. Please read it. And this is the importance of regional cooperation, because sustainable energy transition, deployment of renewables is hardly possible in a single separated country. It's a regional task. They're very much interdependent with their neighbors. And these are Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, right? You mentioned
Yes.
Turkmenistan, but I would say overall Central Asia, and the same situation we see in Western Balkans and across the region overall. And this is why there must be regional cooperation established in this direction. Otherwise, it will be a challenging mission, if at all possible.
Thank you, Alexandra, for help.
Thank you indeed, and thank you, Ainur, for this, and Alexandra. I mean, this is a new skill. You were fantastic. I really didn't miss anything, and I'm sure neither did anybody else. So thank you so much. This team was wonderful. Now, I know we are severely out of time, but we still have 3 people, and these are really important speakers that I'd request everybody to take the time to listen to. So next, I'd like to bring on Olga Boyko, who's the coordinator of the Climate Action Network in Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia. Olga, without any further delay, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I must say, in general, Rana, your presentation was really good, and it covered some points that I was focusing on. So I will be building on your words. But actually, this is good because it means that your information you presented is really relevant, and it's how it is, it's how it is in the region. It's what I've noticed as well, and what I'm thinking we should focus on as well. So let me quickly also give you some context about who I am and what is CAN ECCA or ICA. So I'm a part of a civil society in Ukraine, based in Kyiv right now, and Climate Action Network is a global network of civil society organizations. ICA stands for Eastern Europe, Caucasus, Central Asia. Currently, we have members who are civil society organizations in 11 countries, 57 members, and we are working on, mostly focused on climate and energy policy through empowering civil society participation. Basically what I wanted to say is that obviously this year on February 24, the world has changed. It especially changed for Ukraine and for our region. So the waves are like coming far, but the closer you are to the epicenter, the more it influences everything, actually, everything. So in the region, Russia has been a big influence on the energy market, obviously, supplying neighboring countries with cheap gas, basically hooking them on it, and building nuclear power plants on their territories. And if we're talking about Central Asia, it's very interesting because the plans for building nuclear power plants in Uzbekistan, in Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan are still out there. And the process for this has been always very shady, I would say. So this is one way to look at the energy relationships, how they are intertwined, and how they're still very much connected to the past that we have here. And now it has become clear that these relationships have been damaged on different levels, and Russia is actively losing its allies, I would say. So we are living in a world where we have now an opportunity to phase out fossil fuels, but it turned out that we are not ready for that. And even if we look at the countries that have the best climate policy imaginable, they are the ones that are struggling right now with planning for the winter, etc., with energy prices. So not only we're in the multiple crises, the geopolitical, the climate and energy crisis, but we are in this kind of a full speed mode to try and adapt to the new reality as we go. So this is, to say at least, challenging. Basically, I wanted to kind of imagine what would be the most important focus for the region in terms of energy transition to renewable energy, and what will come next for our region. So I think that the long-term topic number one would become energy independence, and this is something that Rana was mentioning as well, and already in the short term, heating. Energy independence is something that, for example, Ukraine has been after for many years. There's been a big shift towards small-scale renewables and quite successful decentralization reform, but it didn't come easy, and the reform itself that allows you to leave a big part of the budget locally in the cities and in municipalities. The reform was mostly driven by the association agreement with the EU that we had, a similar situation in Georgia and Moldova. So in order to succeed, for me, the decentralization, the powerful civil society are all very directly intertwined with what we are talking about right here. And this, if you want to use this as a kind of success story or replicate it in, for example, Central Asian countries, you have to understand that you have to have democracy, you have to have developed a civil society, fight corruption to have investments, both from abroad, but also from the businesses within the country. And these are all, as I said, topics that have been covered today, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but these are all challenges for renewable energy development in the ECA countries, because when you, basically it connects as far as to the question of, whether civil society can actually influence any kind of decisions, like the ones that I mentioned about nuclear power plants, or they are simply, developing their skills and then going abroad, for example. And then you are left with a country that desperately needs to change, but there's no one to do it actually, because it doesn't happen on its own. And as for the heating, well, our region desperately needs affordable and clean heating solutions. That's not a new topic at all. That has been on the agenda for quite a while. It has never been, I would say, a matter of life and death, probably until now, or rather never has been seen in this way, because the energy poverty is not new as well for the region. And there are a lot of people who have been struggling to even get any heating or electricity by that matter. So in this regard, obviously, Russia is no longer a desired provider of fossil fuels, so the prices go higher. We all know this, we all see this. And on top of that, we're seeing a comeback of coal and the devastating effects of climate crisis, like in Pakistan, for example, but also in our region with floods and droughts. And the winter is coming. So it means that we have to push the energy transition to renewable energy harder than ever. But as we also mentioned today, the energy systems in most Eastern Europe, Caucasus, Central Asian countries are centralized and were built for exactly fossil fuel usage a long time ago during the Soviet Union. So this is a huge challenge for anyone needing heating already in the next months. And I'm sitting here in the cold office in Kiev, and believe me, we will need it. We will need it in 1 month. But obviously here I would kind of divide the challenges, because what is happening in Ukraine right now is that we're having a lot of discussions about actually like wartime heating at home. But so in case the power stations are bombed, etc. But for the region in general, for this winter and the next winters, it will not be as severe, hopefully, but still it is a question of survival, and it is a question of being able to work, to study, to function, right? And this will become more severe as ever. So there is a huge need for the technology, for the access to this technology, and I think that I will finish with my most important message, that the civil society empowerment and the decentralization can really influence the capacity of the ECA countries for energy transition. And it is important to go deeper international and local level. In every country, it's important to use more native languages, and I want to congratulate you with translating the materials and everything in more national languages, and investing in the local groups, civil societies or municipalities, empowering them, showing them how it can work, basically to ensure that we do not depend solely on the central government, and that we actually that we're actually coming through to the people who will then be switching on and off that that heater. So for me, this is obvious steps that we need to take, very difficult ones, but without them, I don't see a way out. On a positive note, it's really, I'm really glad to be here in general, because this report covers the region that usually is not covered. So already talking about these countries that means that we are moving in the right direction, and that the separate voices, and I agree that we need to work as a region, and that's why we have a regional network, but also actually acknowledging that Kyrgyzstan or Armenia or Moldova, they are separate countries, they have their own history and language and their own context, is also very important. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Olga. And I can only say that your key messages were very clear and made a very big impact on at least us, and I'm sure for the rest of the group as well. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting the outreach as well. I know Kanika has been quite active in putting out the messages, so it makes translating all those documents worth it. Thank you so much. I'd next like to bring up Iskandar Buranov, who is currently doing a PhD and is in research, but used to be the country manager for Siemens Energy and is based in Uzbekistan. So Iskandar, over to you.
So thank you very much for inviting for this important event. I said that it's very difficult to share the insights after such a comprehensive speech of Ms. Rana Adib. She covered and addressed all issues that was on my list, and she also provided all solutions that I could share for that. But let me do my part. It is scheduled. So first of all, my job is to share the insights from the renewable investor side. So it's not easy for me given my current status, but as a former country manager for Siemens and Siemens Energy in Uzbekistan, we also, of course, the major business was to sell the equipment, as we are so-called original equipment manufacturer, but we also, in order to simplify or speed up the sales processes, we also try to invest into renewable energy. I was leading the work of Siemens Gamesa in Uzbekistan. Siemens Gamesa, one of the top manufacturer of wind energy equipment. So we tried to facilitate the investments, the sales of equipment through investments, and we worked, of course, with a lot of investors who are now actively working in Uzbekistan. So I could share. So first of all, the drivers. Our part of the world, it is government-led industry, renewable energy. Then second point is absolutely important for investors. Third one is a transparent decision making and concession award processes, and of course quality human capital availability in country. So those are the factors that are driving the investments into the renewable energy. And one factor that I didn't mention, it is volume of the potential projects and the quality of the what we call is feasibility studies or preparatory documents for the projects. So those are the factors that lead and facilitate the investments. When we talk about the barriers, of course, the intermittent nature of the renewable energy sources are the barrier. So it was, as it was mentioned by colleagues from the Kazakh Green Energy Association. Recently, there was announced the auction with due on October, November, and with the total capacity of 600 megawatt, 690 megawatt. I can tell you that out of these 690 megawatt, there were three plots, three solar energy PV plots with 20 megawatt capacity, which is, of course, for the large investors into renewable energy, it is quite a small amount, and that amount cannot attract the big investors, big players. What we see in Uzbekistan, we see that recently the new government announced this move to renewable energy in order to substitute conventional gas power generation. But we see some unclarity. We see that many auctions being organized, for example, by IFC and EBRD, based on clear, transparent processes. But in the parallel, we can see that many plots, for example, huge wind energy plots being awarded to the IPPs on exclusive, uncompetitive basis. That, of course, gives to investor very, I would say, not a very, that raises a lot of questions. Yeah, so that is the point. So what we need is, as mentioned, very clear and transparent decision making and concession award processes. Yeah. Then we talked about the what could be, what solutions do we see? Yeah. So what we see, we see the solution, the complex approach, comprehensive approach as a solution. For example, it could be not only one source project. Yeah, it could be, for example, 500 megawatt of winds together with the pump storage hydro. Yeah, so it is two projects in one scope, but it adds the scale, it adds the volume. Ultimately, it helps to reach the carbon neutrality goal much more faster. Yeah. Then it was mentioned a couple of times, this regional, or in our case sub-regional approach, given the historical development of the sector in Central Asia, is also could be a good move. For example, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan have a fuel-based energy system, which could be balanced by hydropower based energy system of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. So I really praise and support the approach which was mentioned by Ms. Adib and a colleague from the Kazakh Green, that considering the sub-regional approach and choosing the project in two countries or three countries altogether will add the volume, will add the quality, will add the quality. But of course, to make such kind of complex projects, the legal basis should be very much close in all the countries. Yeah, that we consider. Another topic, another solution could be subsidy to resource assessment and revenue and environmental impact assessment from the government side. So in that case, investor would not need much time and resources to spend on those issues. So it will help to investors to make a very informative decision. Yeah. So, and it will not take much time for that. So and of course, those resource assessment and environmental impact assessment should be executed by independent third party, which has a proven quality work, yeah, of contribution. So, of course, I have a lot of things to say on this very interesting topic, but I would stop at this moment, given the given the timeline.
I guess you noticed that I came on beside you maybe too, but no, it was very interesting, Iskandar, and I think this is a perspective we were so far missing in both events. So indeed, thank you for bringing these up, and it was really good to hear from you. So next, I would like to bring in somebody who's been a very key part of this project. We mentioned him already in the beginning, Gianluca Sambucini from UNECE, as actually someone who's probably been there, or maybe one of the only ones who's been there since the first edition of the REN21 UNECE report in 2015. So Gianluca, you have a lot to, a lot of experience in this regard, and you've been working with these countries for a long time. Over to you.
Thank you, Bibu. Thank you to all. It's a pleasure to continue this cooperation, and I look forward also to the next activities and next challenges. What has been said by the different colleagues and experts from the countries is definitely that this report is covering a region that usually is not covered, and therefore is really bringing an added value, but also value by filling a gap of information and data. Now there is a baseline which can track the various trends and also allow a better understanding why things are working or not working. And to have a reliable data in the region is extremely important because in this way it's possible really to have a better understanding on the scale up of the uptake of renewable energy technologies in a region of 300 million of people. Since, as already mentioned by different colleagues, since 2014, there is a dedicated UNECE group of experts on renewable energy that has been working in different activities. A major activity is tracking data, mainly with REN21. This is a very close cooperation since then. And we had, as we said, a number of reports, and now we are launching this last report that, of course, is providing good news and bad news at the same time. But I think it's very important because this news or this data, this information allow also all those that are key actors, major stakeholders to act based on well-known data and reliable data and information. In addition to that, we have been also with a group of experts trying to facilitate the exchange of information among countries, those that are more advanced, others that are less advanced, but are willing and are committed to increase the uptake of renewable energy. And through that, we also try to work in the countries directly. We had in the last years 10 hard talks. We had in Georgia, in Ukraine, Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Serbia. And then in the last year, we had also other new hard talks in Albania, in Georgia, in Serbia, and Moldova. And this has been done in close cooperation with REN21, with DINA, and with other partners. We had also a number of matchmaking mechanism and events, and also activities on water and energy nexus approach. We had this cooperation with the DEFCO, the engineer in the past, especially in Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan. And we look forward, of course, to facilitate the use of data for improving the situation and basically all the elements that are needed, and then at the same time lead to an improvement and increase of investments on renewable energy. And for some countries, data and the hard talks were of help to establish a specific renewable energy targets. And then in some cases also to approve a dedicated legislation and improve the regulatory framework, to launch a round of auctions. So this was the case of Kazakhstan, to focus on more sensitive issues such as the environmental impact and the need for a water energy nexus approach, and overall to consider the more effective way for strengthening the infrastructure that is needed for increased uptake of renewable energy. If we take only the last hard talk, we can see that there is, during the summer, we had a hard talk in Moldova, and the focus was on resilience and flexibility options in the energy system. Among the recommendation, it was proposed that a comprehensive power system plan should be finalized as soon as possible and align future grid reinforcement and extensions with a planned deployment of renewable energy capacities in order to ensure efficient system integration. Another hard talk took place in Serbia in November of 2021 and was focused on renewable energy support mechanism in the country. And the focus was on the recent net metering scheme and the upcoming renewable energy auctions. In Georgia, the recent hard talk was focused on building support for investments in renewable energy. And a key recommendation was the need to establish a long-term policy strategy for setting longer-term renewable energy targets that will provide a clear signal to investors. The long-term policy, a clear set of normative and regulatory framework. These are the basis for building the confidence from the investors and therefore to attract investments in a country. Another hard talk that took place in Albania, this time the focus was on the uptake and integration and harmonization of renewable energy with the electricity network. And some of the recommendations were related to the renewable energy zones and should consider also an integrated approach to renewable energy development together with the land use for agriculture, especially when considering large-scale photovoltaic plants. Basically, with all this experience and all these multi-stakeholder dialogues, proved the importance of historical and potential data and trends that overall allow a formulated and evidence-based development pathway for sound decision-making and sector development. We hope to continue to organize new hard talks during the next year. We are looking forward, of course, to receive a request for organizing such kind of hard talks in cooperation with Rent21 and DINA. And then more discussion on the outcome and key findings of this report will be also taking place during the 9th session of the Group of Experts on Renewable Energy on 6th and 7th of October within the UNECE Sustainable Energy Expert Week. You are all invited to participate. And of course, I would like to thank you again for your attention and the cooperation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gianluca. Thank you very much for being such a key partner in this process. I must say we'll miss having our regular chats with you and Lawrence and others after this process is done. So definitely we should start a new project. I'm aware that we're very late, so I really thank everybody for being here. There are just some last bits, so I'll bring on Camilla again and Rana as well. Rana, we'd love for you to share some final reflections from your side and before showing the team behind this project.
Sorry, somebody wants to unmute me, but I think, yeah. Sorry, yes, one tech glitch, which is just very little actually compared to everything which we managed to do. So congratulations to the team. That's maybe the first thing. I think I find it really interesting to listen basically into the country's perspectives and also have this feedback, I think, from players who are directly working in the countries, in the field on renewable energy uptake, but from a diversity of perspective. And hearing that there is a value in the report and that the report is really reflective of the realities you're encountering in your work. So I think this really can happen and is ensured by the fact that the report builds on crowdsourced information and on the community coming together and sharing the insights. What I found really interesting is when we're looking into government perspectives, industry, civil society, in a very different way in terms of the words we are using, we're speaking about the same things. And I feel this is actually a message which is really important. Often when we enter discussions and entry points to imagining the future, we might have a bit of a polarization in different entry points. But when we engage in dialogue, when we have reference data, knowledge, and wording we can refer to, we can really start a discussion about the common ground of understanding and build the future. And this brings me to the part, I think, I feel the region is really accentuating very much the importance of energy, the current situation too, and that moving to renewable energy is not only important for climate reasons, and often even more important for other reasons, whether it is security, energy security. whether it's economic activities, whether it is poverty, whether it is health. And I think these are real values. And working together will also allow us to really drive the societal change. On the wording, I would like to underline one thing. I think we heard the word of intermittency of renewable energy. And I think as coming from Renton, I just need to pause on this. I really invite everybody to move to another wording of a variability of renewables, because a variability can be addressed, and I think is pointing us also to the fact that there are solutions for it. Sasha had really mentioned the interconnection of grids, balancing capacities. We had in the chat messages on storage. The fact also there is massive hydropower in the region that can actually complement solar PV and wind. Then also the integration between the sectors, whether it is the power sector, heating and cooling, and transportation, allow us to really move forward. So there are lots of solutions. Let's also choose a wording that is pointing to solutions. And then the other part, so much learning in the region, so much knowledge in the region, and I think stories that can really guide us very much on societal choices that are highly relevant also for the global story. So we really invite you, I think, to join a global multi-stakeholder dialogue on 20 to 23rd of February next year, happening in collaboration with the Spanish government at the Spanish International Renewable Energy Conference. And another part, I think, Ola, you had mentioned it, the region often does not appear when we speak about renewable energy, but the reality is there are so many great things ongoing and that need to continue. So please, let's find ways of continuing basically the dialogues, collaboration, and find the spaces for it. Renton from its side will contribute. But another part, I also invite you to make sure that those stories are heard globally. So use the global platform Renton Presents and join us in another exciting tracking and data process, which is the production of the Renewables Global States Report. You'll receive information end of the month. We'll launch the new edition, and I look forward to collaborate with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rana. Camilla, I guess you have some points.
Yes, thanks a lot, Rana, and thanks a lot to everybody for hanging on with us. So our lead author has been answering some questions in the chat, and we can imagine that you might have questions later. So that is why we will share a link and an email address in the chat where you can address your questions later, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Along with any comments that you have, for example, data points, because in some, as we've already mentioned, lots of data, especially investment, has been a huge challenge for us in putting together this report. So all of us, especially the authoring team, would really appreciate any comments you have. Send it to the same email and we'll include it. You'll see lots of faces popping up. One very key face that I want to introduce is Anastasia Iannou, who is, who has been my partner in crime, as we say, through this process, and is very important to this process. Anastasia, maybe in 30 seconds, if you give a very quick overview before we start wrapping up.
Just to thank REN21 and UNECE and also Dina for this very exciting and fascinating experience to be part of this team. And just to also highlight, the importance of this report. It presents key statistics, highlights where availability of data is missing, and we really need to do something about it. So I would invite everyone to have a look and let us know if questions arise or if there are any data that you could also offer. That would be great. And also get informed about the current status.
Absolutely. And so you'll finally see, a lot of these pretty red screens coming up. So these are part of the authoring team alongside Alexandra Novikova, and are really, members of the community from these different countries, very actively working on renewables from the different focus countries, but also in the different sectors. So please do feel free to reach out to them continuously, because I think there's a lot of learning over here, apart from, of course, Gianluca again. And with this, we will, after a lot of delay, say goodbye to all of you and hope that you will continue to read the report and its findings. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you again soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.